First up on the agenda is approval of the minutes from May 14th, 2024. And the minutes are here. Has everyone had a moment to peruse the minutes? I think they look good. Yeah.
Motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, May 14th.
We have a motion to approve minutes from May 14th.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve minutes from May 14th. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and next up, we have the most fun time of the year, the FY25 budget overview, which is this document here. The general fund operating budget, is that correct, Tammy?
Yes.
All right. So I had a few moments to look at this ahead of time. Are you able to give us a high-level overview here?
It's pretty much what we went over, and you'll see the final budget at $14,427,960.13. With our revenues and expenses, I just did an estimation. Pretty close. We're very tight with our budget. We're kind of off around 25,000, but I don't have all the new growth in there, so, and I did on the low side when I did the estimation when I worked with the town accountant. So our budget is very slim, but it works.
All right, so what does this include for, so we had some changes that were anticipated in terms of the school, the Providence School District. Where are we with that number?
So that is 5.09%, and that's what I kept it at. That was the last one that they gave us.
And that was after the Senate Ways and Means update?
Yes, because it was at 8%, now it's at 5.09.
5.09.
It passed last night at Hubbardston.
Yeah, it did pass.
So, and it's, OCAM did their meeting, right? It passed in OCAM?
Passed,
All
yep,
right, so it is what it is.
yep.
Did we take into consideration the lease agreement for the fire truck that may potentially come onto the books in FY25?
So it is probably gonna definitely come onto the books, I would assume. Probably have a special meeting for that. So
Okay.
I don't know when it's getting over here. Plus we have to do the remainder. There's like $23,000 that we have to try to account for. Again, I'm hoping, down the road, we'll see exactly where we are once
Okay.
the tax rate recap is completed.
Okay, so we don't, that's not in the budget here
It's not in
for
the
the
budget.
first payment?
No,
Okay.
no.
And if I remember correctly, the ambulance was gonna be funded from the opera funds?
Yes, that's
Okay.
already been,
That's already been taken care of?
yeah.
All of the department CBAs that were under negotiation or finalized and part of these figures?
Yes, they are.
So, the overall budget is $1 million over last year.
It is a little bit over, so obviously, as we,
$1 billion over, right?
13.5, 14.4, close to, probably about 900,000. We have to take into consideration though, right now, if you look at our accounts right now, we definitely under budgeted, which is why we're always deficit. So we have to take it, on this budget, you'll see that we took into consideration inflation, items that we always seem to go over. We have to take into consideration the heat, electric, all this has to be part of our operating budget, so you will see that all that came into play, plus, the school went up a little bit as well. We have to take in consideration, plus all the union contracts, we went up with all that. I mean, we we definitely did I feel we did a very good job with level funding, sticking with our 2.5, and with the unions being completed, we did it very well. We did very well with what we have.
So when you say the budget is tight, so we made up that $1 million, from 2024 by new growth, or how did we?
So I estimated by the cherry sheets, by the estimated receipts, which I think I gave you all those.
Yes.
And, indirect costs from water sewer, debt exclusion, 2.5 prop, taking all that. And like I said, I went over this with the accountant, so she helped me with all this. So the school budget is $7,278,176. Our budget ends up being $6,629,784.13, because we always use part of the ambulance reserve, which is part of the article you'll see in there, $520,000 to offset our budget, which Chief Rogowski did mention when he came and presented his budget. So, yeah. You're always gonna go up a little bit on your budget anyways, it's an unfortunate thing, but.
$1 million hit
Yeah.
in a fiscal year is tough.
Yeah, well, it was very under budgeted, unfortunately,
Over the last 5 years, we've been going up about 4% on average.
yeah, we're always hitting
4%.
deficit, we
So I
did,
don't know. Some years we try to trim it,
yeah.
and then
You guys have another copy of this? I can check it out.
Is that an extra
Hey,
copy?
you can have that one.
So the fuel account, the town pays for all the fuel?
Yes. Plus the regional dispatch, that went up a lot.
Well, that was also part of a clerical error, right, with last?
It was, but it's still a big significant difference.
And how about the capital, combined capital improvement ban? That's not noted, at least on the budget, as debt excluded, but that was voted as a debt excluded item.
That I'm not sure, I wasn't here, so I'm not sure of that, and I don't have Jake here, so, would you know that, John, about the debt exclusion?
I'm not sure on that one.
The capital, it was at the poll, like, it was, the town had a vote on it at the Legion and the Senior Center for the capital improvement ban. That was moved to debt exclusion to free up, funding.
Okay.
We'll get that cleared up.
So we wanna make sure that that's noted with the DE on the budget, and
So
then
what line would that be on?
that is last page.
With the, principal?
Debt, both principal and, interest, debt interest. So the account ending in 591126.
1126.
Both of those should be, considered debt exclusions, cause we should have the revenue coming in for those separately as a debt
Okay.
excluded revenue.
Okay.
Is that noted on revenues?
So on my revenues that I came in, I have a debt exclusion here of 400,000, like I said, I did it with the town accountant, so,
Okay. So that should be
so
in
it
there,
is included.
okay. We just have to have notation.
So I'll put this in under the 2.5.
This is under 2.5, correct? we're under 2.5, right?
Usually the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing. It is.
I mean, my opinion on that is, you know, the town's been finding money in buckets here and there, as you guys, everyone on the committee knows, you know, we had the landfill stabilization fund, you know, we had a windfall with some free cash a couple of years ago, we've had ARPA, you know, CARES Act, those buckets are running out. So this trend of increased budget year over year is gonna eventually need to result in either cutting budget or increasing revenues. You know, maybe not FY '25, but I think you look forward into FY '26, FY '27,
Absolutely.
that's a conversation that's gonna have to be had with the town.
I agree.
Speaking of free
Where-
cash,
Where's the ARPA money in that budget? So
Are you gonna see
so
that in the
that's-
articles we have?
So the ARPA money is gonna disappear next year?
It needs to be appropriated by the end of this
Yeah,
calendar year.
Mhm.
baby.
So hopefully that was used for things that aren't yearly
I
expenses.
think we have a list somewhere.
We do have a list somewhere.
We can,
That backward bending curve.
we can, discuss that a little bit further when we get into the article, because it is on there.
Free cash. Where does it actually stand?
That's on the article.
Negative 62,000 is what we have for free cash.
But, I mean, are we catching up on it? I mean,
So
are we on
luckily, like I
schedule?
mentioned with the overlay surplus, like we talked about with the Board of Assessors being kind
Right.
enough to
Yes.
release 212,000, that should get us out of the red zone. So I'm hoping this year, with that being done, as long as the annual town meeting, we have the voters vote for it, that will help us at least get a fresh start. I'm hoping I can start getting our trend to go back up instead of continually going down like it has been over the years.
Well, not only that, but I mean, is the accounting and everything scheduled going according to the way it should be?
Yes, as of right now it is, is what
Okay.
I can see, yes.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I'm trying, very hard.
Good at, okay.
Dan, I have one question.
Yeah.
On the salaries for highway, water, and sewer, I see numbers have changed. Who made those
Would you like to
decisions?
answer that for the salary, John, for the 2.5%? So we stuck with the 2.5%.
So, who made the decisions to change those? That's
John's gonna answer.
So that's what the select board has put on there. That's what we went through at our meeting. So the raises that incurred there are primarily based on the union contract. That's not something we can really change. Any other, across the town, for the most part, anything that's not going under an MOU or a contract, we're trying to keep at the same percentage right now.
Okay, so if a department puts in a budget number, it goes before this board, and everybody, it's approved across everything, nothing's been talked about, who makes a decision to change things and does not notify the departments or department heads about changes in their budget prior to being put in on this paperwork?
I'm not sure the standard for notifying departments. Essentially, we have the public hearings, town meeting, it can be raised. Right here it can be raised as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just saying, these numbers don't reflect the budgets that we all went over here at this table. I believe if you guys look into it legally, the water commission approves the budget, they have the right to put whatever they want in there. The sewer commission approves the budget, they're elected officials, same as select board, they have the same powers for their department. The select board doesn't have any say over their stuff, I'm just not sure, like, where this goes in and how numbers get changed without talking to these people prior to, just throwing it in your spreadsheet.
Sounds like a legitimate question to me.
We talked with the attorney today, I don't know if you wanna mention about that.
So,
Well, I
as
think
far as the sewer and water goes, I don't think anything's been changed on the sewer and water side of it. Essentially, we're trying, so, as far as reaching out, I think, there needs to be discussion about that. I'm putting a list together for the DPW commission meeting of different items. But yeah,
Okay, So
I think,
you
I
put
think
the
that
list
was
together.
a miss.
All right, hold on, we're gonna
I'm
get
gonna
this
say
back.
that was a miss on my
Well,
part.
all right, we're good with that. So there's the department request columns,
Mhm.
all right? And then, so we're working off of the TA recommendation.
Yes.
All right, so that's what the finance committee will essentially look to see is, you know, the TA recommendation gives the town a balanced budget.
Yep.
So that's like what the finance committee will discuss here, but on your number that you submitted should be under the department request column.
It is.
You'll note it was last year or the year before, it was the same situation with the school budget. There was what the school budget was, and then there was also what was recommended by
The
Yeah,
town.
but there should be some communication between the manager that's.
Yep, I mean,
That doesn't make sense. I mean, you wouldn't,
I don't think
Cut
we reached
the
out to the
police
school
salary.
another time either, but we can definitely.
Well,
start
it has it
using
right
that.
on here as a department
It-
request, which is on there, and then the town administrator recommendation. That
Right.
is
They're-
my
they're both-
recommendation for fiscal. So the town
Yeah.
administration, the town town administrator recommendation. So my job is to make sure that we're getting
Okay.
fiscally responsible. I have to make sure that we are,
but usually it would be in
It- it's-
communication with the manager.
it's in here as a department request as to what the DPW.
It's shown what it was requested at and what we're recommending.
Right.
That's how it's been done.
Right.
So I think we can work on communicating better with the school and with DPW. So,
That's, yeah.
yeah, we'll work on improving that communication going
Yeah.
forward.
I don't wanna like derail the conversation.
I can't see if they change that,
Mm.
but it goes back to the same thing. Water and sewer budget doesn't fiscally attach to the town's budget, that's paid separately.
Correct, that's the
So I'm not
enterprise
sure,
funds.
you know, those numbers shouldn't change, so you have a balanced budget, that's not.
Mm.
I guess my question, the only question I have, when I look at it, you know, and I definitely understand what John's saying, so the school wanted X, we appropriated Z, and then, you know, at town meeting, they ended up getting X. Are we talking about, salaries, or are we talking about like fuel accounts or something?
No salaries, salaries.
Under roads and highways.
Yeah, water and sewer isn't in this list, I'm not sure if it's approved on this.
I think almost all of the salaries are under the union agreement. So there's only a couple that aren't under that. And those, you know, for pretty much the entire town, if we're not entering into an MOU with someone or under a contract negotiation with them, we wanted to keep everyone at that 2.5%. That's what the town can do right now.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, we're already over, so.
But when we go into these things and water commissioners and sewer commissioners agree to a raise, when we give DPW employees a 12% raise, but we're giving management 2% raise, you know, when you have low man on the totem pole making more than the supervisor, that's kind of backwards. And unfortunately, this has happened for multiple years, and if you look into it legally, it's not legal for the select board to change any documents coming from water and sewer commissioners. So we need to get to the bottom of this, what we're doing is not proper.
I think ultimately what we absolutely need to do is put together an MOU between the select board and other personnel who aren't under the union. That's kind of our goal for a lot of positions in town, so that we have things that are clarified, so that it's established, negotiated properly, and not just numbers that are thrown out that are higher for some departments and lower for other departments. So I think ultimately, we need to do an MOU, or if certain other things pass the town meeting, we could do a full contract for some of the management at DPW.
I think we're getting the cart before the horse here, so that's okay, at least you guys are aware of what's going on, thank you.
So with that being said, I have, in terms of the future conversation about some of the bylaws that are looking to be updated or changed. The Act of 1988 does say that the DPW commission should put forth the wages, and this committee hasn't seen anything from the DPW commission. You presented the budget,
Yep.
but we haven't received an approved DPW commission that should be reviewed by the finance committee or the personnel board.
I'll say as the vice chair, there was nothing that was put forward
Okay.
on that, as the vice chair of the DPW commission. That's not something that's been done in previous years, it's something we should look at doing. I know according to that act, it's a recommendation to the personnel. I believe.
Mhm.
Well, the commission shall recommend to the personnel board a rate of compensation which shall be funded at annual town meeting. So that's what I'm saying, is the commission has not
Right,
provided a recommendation.
right.
That's right.
We need to address that going forward, but again, if we can get MOUs or contracts in place, I think that would be the best way to move forward for many, several personnel in town to make sure everyone's being fairly compensated and the town can handle those situations moving forward.
One more question while we're kind of on the subject of communication. We used to, as department heads, we used to always get the articles that are gonna be on town meeting, so if we had any questions, we could come and ask questions and be informed about that. We haven't seen any budget numbers from town administrator's office. I know myself, the police department, the fire department has not received any of this stuff. I checked on it all today before this meeting. That's one reason, I'm here, was to see what was going on, because we haven't had any information passed out and about.
Well, didn't the chair give it to
So-
you? Did Maureen give it to you? I thought she had given you the numbers.
No, I mean,
No.
usually it'd be an email to every department head in town.
Well, I am
Let
new at
us
this, so
know.
I've only been here for six
I'm
months,
sorry I
so I
wasn't
would
aware of
not
that
know
either. We'll
that.
make sure everyone has it by tomorrow.
And honestly, I just, I'll be honest with you, I just got everything put together, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been time constrained for
We'll
me.
make sure it's out to every department for tomorrow.
This,
This is the
we,
first time we've seen it also.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's just, it's a lot.
Maybe it could say draft.
well, I know again by town code, right,
Well,
like,
it doesn't have to
the
be
finance
on
committee is supposed to receive
No.
all the articles to review ahead of time, and then they should be published to all departments ahead of the public hearing. So we'll have the public, we will have the public hearing next week.
It just
I do agree,
expired last year.
We'll have
that
those published as-
communication, we need to get on that path of.
I think it's well
cross-communication.
presented though, showing the TA recommendation.
Yes.
Showing the original request of the department. Every department every year wants more,
Right.
so it's fair to change, to adjust these numbers.
And
In the process of coming up with a budget.
It's very hard to come up with a budget that we're gonna be able to actually fiscally be responsible on, so.
It's
To
important.
mirror what
It's
John's
important.
saying, and I know they're not free, a wage study, they cost $40,000, it's, we see it being pieced together, this one needs a little, this one needs a little, and this one, in a perfect world, a wage study would show, this one's paid in line, this one's underpaid, this one, and it's not corrected overnight, it does take a long time,
And,
but.
as far as, looking into grants go, I think, One Stop for Community Growth could be a good option next year
Yeah.
to try and pursue that, get some funding for that.
Yeah.
We
We've
submitted
actually
for
talked
something
about it.
different this year, but that would be a good one to have on the docket for next year.
They're a little cheaper, I think there's a big outfit that does them,
Okay.
but they're like 25, they're not
I
free.
think there's
One
actually a
Stop for Growth
grant.
usually can provide, I think, up to 80,000 towards
wow.
different projects, it's somewhere around there. So I know we applied for around 57,000 for rezoning study this
Right.
year.
Yeah,
So fingers crossed we'll get
I
that.
think there's a grant in August too that I'm gonna be watching out for wage classification, cause it's very
I'm at the
important.
Barre Taxpayers Association meeting, but
Us too.
if, if I can get everybody from there to come here, it might be smart for them to listen.
we missed you, Sam.
Unless you're gonna be here, only 2 more minutes.
No.
I doubt that very much today. All right, so, all right, I think we can agree communication. Now, if, there is rules though, like we went through this in terms of salary, when interim, Mr. Belaconis was here. And that's what I don't know. I don't know the answer, right? Like, I know the town has rules in place on, like, steps, levels. I don't know your contract or your agreement with the town. I think, if the salary increase is not in line with the policy, that should definitely be something that should be rectified.
We have
And-
wage classification, and
Yes.
we're working on
Yeah.
that as well.
100%.
That's why, like John was saying, taking some out, putting them in MOUs and or contracts is,
But we have some sort of classification
and we
process.
absolutely do, yes, we do,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's always been adjusted by the wage salary put on this.
Mhm.
That's how they're always adjusted.
Okay.
So.
Going off of the recommendations, if we went, let me ask this question, if we went with every department funded as requested, the budget would not be balanced, correct?
Right, right.
kind of thinking about what Dan said a few minutes ago, you know, we've had all these cash windfalls, and the other night hearing you guys, take money out of ARPA, I love it, I love that there's that money there. I get nervous when it's not there, you know, and it's like,
It's not gonna be there for a while.
Yeah.
So,
And wage, yeah,
For it to go away.
If I could just, one second.
sure.
Yeah, so if you look at the department requests and the TA recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's only off by $5,000. That's basically just my number, that's in there. So it doesn't look like anybody else's budget's gonna change besides ours.
so you look like a 12% raise, I'm trying to keep everyone at a 2.5% raise, and that's why that had happened.
Yeah, we did it,
So you think that the janitor that works here should be
He's
making
actually
more
moved
money
up a
than-
step,
than
he moved up a
yourself?
step. The janitor,
Should be making more than you?
the janitor moved up a step, and he only is at 2.5% raise, so.
Pretty sure that wasn't my question.
Well, I don't know how you would consider me and the janitor the same thing, so.
Okay, thank you.
Fair?
That's fair here. I think that's slightly different, just as I think when we're
Okay,
talking about here, so.
okay.
wages are a challenge,
Yeah, I'm not-
yeah, yeah,
I just-
it's,
We want some clarification, that's all.
I know since I've joined the finance committee here, we've been struggling with increasing the wages of all the town associates to get everybody to a living wage that's comparable to surrounding towns. The impact you can't do that in one stroke in 1 year, because the impact to the taxpayer, we need a 2.5% override. So I know the town started a couple years ago, we've done a few departments with a higher than average increase to bring them up to that wage that we're discussing. I feel that should definitely be a conversation that should be had amongst you, the commission, and finance committee, select board, so that way we can get all that brought into line. I'm not sure if, there's always the option to bring it up on town floor,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
That's fine.
and we have to backtrack from there.
I was just curious how the
Mhm.
process was
No,
and all
understood.
that.
Any other questions on the budget? We don't have to vote on the budget today, correct? I mean, I would just like a public maybe to our public hearing to digest everything here. Or fully, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll take the recommendation from the committee
We
on
only
that.
had an hour or so to look at it, so I guess you're right. We should wait.
I don't think
Mhm.
last year we voted
To the
until the
public
day, yeah,
Yeah, probably, yeah.
yeah. I think like an hour before we
Mhm.
actually,
Okay.
Right, usually a meeting right before town meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's traditional, and then we tend to offer some recommendations at public hearing as well in the past, so,
Is it true that yours budget is the only one that was adjusted?
Looking at those ones
I
quickly in my
kept
head.
everyone, so no one really asked, most of that I had asked for 2.5%, no one really came in and asked me for 12% like Jason did. They all understood that I'm trying to be fiscally responsible and took my recommendation at 2.5%. I mean, we can go ahead and bring them all in, they'd all probably ask for 12%, and then we can do the 2.5, we could do that too, because that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's what I get nervous about, just trying to be fiscally responsible.
If I may say one thing.
yeah.
I believe if you look back in the past few years, every department in town has had over a 12.5% increase, so, except for my department. So to be fiscally responsible and fair, if you wanna look into past practice, I think you'll see that the police chief, the fire chief, your position included, has all been over a 12.5% increase. So in all fairness, you've done this a couple different times here without any adjustments, so.
So the chief is all the other employees are union contracts and yours is not.
Right.
Is that the issue?
That's-
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the police chief is contract negotiated with the
Yes,
select
yeah.
board,
Yep.
fire chief as well.
And he
Right.
also only got a 2.5%, so just,
Okay.
But
the
they-
police chief also.
This year,
Yeah.
Well,
Let's look
again,
at-
Jay, I don't know
let's
what
look at
happened
last
last year, I don't know if you wanna speak up, I was not here last
I-
year.
I
have to
will
look at
add,
the last contract was.
when the, Tammy's position got increased, Tammy wasn't a person.
right.
You know, it was, they increased it to hire, it,
Yeah,
like, it wasn't like,
No, absolutely.
you know.
You gotta look at the position, not the person,
Yeah.
you gotta take the person out of the equation.
Yeah.
The,
I guess the part I'm confused about, and I did watch the meeting on the 22nd, and I was here the other night. You know, it seems like a huge communication breakdown.
Huge.
If a board approves a raise, I don't understand how it can get unapproved. Like, that's the confusing part.
So, there was no raise that I'm aware of that was approved by the commission. There was no wage that was approved by them, by us. I don't recall that coming up, I don't recall that in any of the meeting minutes. There was one meeting I missed in the last several months, and I don't believe that was on those minutes, I'll have to check those again.
It wasn't, or was that all of them?
I can't imagine we live in a world where Jake gives himself a raise on a piece of paper and it like happens, like it comes through, and like, that's the confusing part on my end, and it's like, and I'm gonna mirror what Dan said on the communication. It just seems like, you know, we all need communication at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I don't believe there was anything authorized or discussed with the DPW commission as far as raises go.
Well, usually the budget's done individually, so the water approves their budget, sewer approves their budget, the selectmen go over our budget. So that's why I was curious if you guys had looked it over and made a decision, or if Tammy just made a decision on her own, so.
Well, it's the TA recommendation, but we did go over it together.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't make any decisions
the
without
re-
going to the select.
that's so the recommendation, right, is what she recommends, finance committee should look at the budget, offer their favorable recommendation, same thing with the select board. And then ultimately it goes to town meeting for the town to approve and or amend.
Right.
Any, it's a task of the finance committee to bring forth a balanced budget. Unfortunately, I don't know what that means in terms of that $5,000 in the wages. Let me ask you this. Did the commission approve wage increases through water and sewer enterprise?
They have approved the budget, yes.
And that had the same level of increase that
Same
was
level of
presented?
increase, yeah.
Okay.
So it's only a third of that line item that's actually through.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah.
They're through the, they're all through the union though, right? Is that what?
No, we're talking about approving
Oh,
the budgets
approving.
we submitted.
Oh, okay.
However,
Again, that's not even what's here, I just happened.
Yeah, no, it's valid points, and this is the most robust conversation with this committee's had in a while, so I appreciate it.
I do believe that under the current act, though, it does, the personnel board, the commission shall recommend to the personnel board rate of compensation. So that does have to go through the DPW commission, it can't be individually satisfied by select board or by.
You have a meeting coming up, right?
That's easy enough to do, yeah.
So the folks that work on the sewer and the water committee, they're all mostly union?
They're all union, yes.
They're all
Yeah,
union,
except for
and
myself.
you're the only one
Except for myself, yeah.
that isn't covered by that contract.
So I would like to do.
We have to fix it
We do.
somehow.
Yeah, Jason definitely, I believe, should have an MOU of some sort, obviously.
Well, I've been here 15 years, it's always been offered to me to have a contract. I've never felt the need to, I think that's a waste of money for the town to get lawyers involved. We're all adults, we
No,
sit
I
down
don't
at the
think it's a
table,
waste of
figure out what we're gonna do, that's how it's been for 15 years. I still don't see the problem with that, we have a couple individuals that might have personal vendettas and go against the way the world should be, but that's okay. It's the majority of people, so it's not a problem.
I don't think there's any personal vendettas at all.
That was my opinion, so.
Oh, that's,
Is anyone on the committee, we'll move along. You have a question, Mr. Lipson?
No,
Okay.
I came to listen.
All right, I thought you had your hand raised
I
and
came to be entertained.
yeah.
you're the right place.
All right, so, is anyone opposed to digesting the budget and providing a recommendation at public hearing?
I am not,
No.
yeah, I
Okay,
think that's probably,
all right.
Good idea.
Okay, so we will move on in the agenda. We will move on to the annual town meeting warrant review and recommendations, and this is where we will go through and offer our recommendations. As we get into this, has the select board offered recommendations on any of the articles to date?
On some of,
Not
sorry,
that
go
many.
ahead.
Not that many.
Yeah, I think there were a number that that we'd like to see the finance committee's recommendation on, there's others that read.
We'd like to see the selectmen do it.
What's that?
We want, So as we go into this, I kind of like do a little spiel every year, you know, just to refresh some of our newer members like Zach to the finance committee, you know, and just to understand as we go through this, you know, one of the goals of the finance committee is not only to, you know, overview and help interview the departments in town to understand their budget needs to operate effectively and efficiently within a fiscal responsibility. We're also tasked with providing an objective viewpoint for all elected officers, appointed officials within town, and offer the town recommendations for articles at town meeting. So, my suggestion is, look at everything with an objective viewpoint as we go through this. All right, and we're off to Article 1. I think this is pretty common, right? Choose town officers. See if the town will vote to choose all other town officers, agents, committees not elected by ballot or appointed, or take any other action relative thereto.
Motion for favorable action.
I have a motion for favorable.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
This one should have been the first page, so.
Okay. Oh, actually, I do have a question. I didn't realize this was attached. The capital stabilization fund amount was not listed. Do we have?
Oh, I do have that, sorry. Wasn't on the other one. $250,481.86.
250.
481 and how many cents?
$250,431.86.
31, 431.86.
Yeah. I'll put that on though.
Okay. All right, this is actually, I didn't realize it was 2 pages. This shows the free cash, the stabilization, ambulance receipts, all those other pieces, and then the capital stabilization funds, which is important, because that's gonna come into play. Was there, I know we marked favorable, but was there any questions? I know somebody had questions on ARPA earlier.
Well, I was just wondering if that's gonna come in haunt us next year, when, because we're,
No, we gotta suspend it.
It's almost
It's
pretty
gonna
much
go away
expended.
next year.
That's what we have right now, because the board has approved items already, they just have not been taken out yet, because
Okay.
I've been in the process of doing this, so.
Do we know like what's essentially left within that fund?
Not much, I know that, I can't tell you exactly how much though, I know you get minus the 200 for the park, 75,000 for rice, I mean, we're down there, we're getting slim pickings, so.
Okay. All right. Off to Article 2, reports from committees. See if the town will vote to accept the reports of the Select Board, Finance Committee, School Committee, and any other department or committee and act thereon, or take any other action relative thereto.
Motion for favorable action.
We have a motion for favorable.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Article 3, payment of bills from a prior fiscal year. See if town will vote to transfer from available funds some of money paid for bills of a prior fiscal year or take any other action relative thereto. And this says there are no bills of a prior year to be approved by town meeting.
Oh, that's a good thing.
So we can pass over. Do we wanna make a motion to pass over?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to pass over Article 3.
Motion to pass over Article 3,
Second.
and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 4, to see if the town will vote to transfer from any available source of funds sums of money to be added to departmental budgets and appropriations for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2024, or take any other action relative thereto. Any FY '24 budget transfers will be addressed through interdepartmental transfers by the Select Board and Finance Committee at the end of the current fiscal year.
But we don't know what those will be yet, right?
We usually
Yes.
sign off though, no, is
Yeah,
that?
at the end, I had asked, the accountant's department, and they said that I don't put anything here, and you do it, you had said,
After the town meeting, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
we have to show up and sign something, I remember.
Yeah, cause that's gonna be, well, there's the shortfalls, right,
Right.
with the FY '24 in terms of the animal control officer, Rutland Regional Dispatch, as well as, some of the CBAs that were approved. So those will have to be cleaned up with transfers, correct?
Yes.
So, do we need a favor?
I think it would do the town well to have a favorable.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a,
I'll make a motion. Have favorable action on Article 4.
we have favorable action on Article 4, a motion,
Second?
and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Article 5. So this is snow and ice removal, and I think this is
So
coming
what
up
is on here, yes.
later on our agenda.
We can talk about it on the agenda when it comes up.
Yeah.
But usually they take from free cash, but unfortunately, as we all know, we're negative on that, so we can't take from that. So I did put it on the agenda. After this, we can probably discuss that.
Okay, so Article 5, since it's coming up later in our agenda, I think we should pass over.
Okay, motion to pass over.
We have a motion to pass over Article 5.
Second.
We have a motion second to pass over Article 5. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 6, the water enterprise budget. So this is an article that, so this brings up a good question since we're talking about salaries. So are we saying that the salaries in Article 6 match?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
It doesn't have
So-
the requested on there, so.
So I did base it on 2.5%. Again, I went through the select board with them on that. And everything on here, I took Jason's expenses
You talked about that at a select board meeting?
We went through that individually.
individually.
I went through it
However,
individually.
and so did Maureen.
I don't know what Maureen went through with you.
Yeah, I go, reviewing
What?
Maureen, I did.
Okay, so it wasn't.
That
part of
was
that
in
meeting.
helping her determine her recommendation, the TA recommendation.
Yeah,
The
and
recommended
what they
amount.
had,
Okay.
I took in what they had said as well, so. But anyways, this is the numbers that I had come up with the water receipts, retained earnings, and then the salaries, commissions, stipends, expenses, water replacement, water upgrade and direct costs. I got those numbers from Jake. Obviously expenses have to equal revenue. And that's what that is.
So since we had this, since this is part of like a conversation now and later, and this article is sponsored by the DPW Commission. Right, did the DPW Commission provide a recommended
So
number
this is
to the
favorable.
town
The
for the article?
DPW commission hasn't discussed this yet.
So, okay,
And again, the DPW commission would not discuss
What
the water
do we do with these?
article or sewer article.
You see it under here, it is sponsored by the DPW commission.
Well, that's just
I think
whatever,
you're making motions
Right.
here.
So typically, this isn't discussed by the DPW commission.
right, they never have.
So, did the water commission?
I didn't, they were familiar with the budget and approved it.
They did. You sure?
Yeah, I can, I'll take a look through water and sewer, minutes to make sure that.
Well, just to make sure somebody's looking at it, yeah. Nice.
So this is water, not DPW.
That's what it should be.
well, it's the water enterprise budget, but the water enterprise budget, if, you wanna get nitty-gritty into details, right? The department shall have all powers and duties now vested in or exercised in the following departments: the highway department, water department, sewer department, and parks and recreation department.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, but I don't believe anything changed in the water enterprise budget portion, did it? Or did that?
Just the 2.5% salaries, everything else is the same. So everything with water receipts,
So you changed the
so you have to,
salaries in the water budget.
again, after talking with the select board, Jason, I just
Okay.
didn't just make the
But
changes
getting
myself.
back to legal, the select board has nothing to do with the waterfront.
Again, you can speak with the select board on that, okay?
But it's only, so the 2.5% salary is only,
Right.
everything else is
Everything else is up to
union.
It's not just him, it'd be Shannon
And
too.
your salary is shared by
By the three
three
departments.
different
Yes.
departments.
Myself and
So it's
the admin.
So it gets complicated, but
Yeah.
nothing has changed except for that.
And just always keep in mind, we have other employees that are getting 2.5% that are obviously gonna want more as well, so we might have to go back and readjust the whole entire budget might have to go to a 2.5%. I don't know, cause I know this is gonna really open up a can, so just keep that in mind.
Mhm.
'Cause-
Well, it's been, since I've been here, this has been kind of status quo, right? And, so, you know, I believe with the future articles, the can's kind of been open to you,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So,
That's why it's questionable.
it's all relative to processes that should be followed, I guess, by the current act that is looking to be, right, repealed or abolished, I think is the terminology. But maybe that's why, maybe the commission's not doing the job, I don't know.
And I
So
did
now
look
they
at
adjust
last
that.
year's and they were all the same, so everyone was 2% and that's what was on the, water and sewer was 2%. This is 2.5, cause that's what everybody I had asked to stick with, so. I'm going by. what I saw.
And we can make changes on the floor if we need to.
We'll make the changes on the floor, it gets complicated.
It does, it's a lot
We
easier to
might
do
not,
it now,
you know,
right?
we'd like to talk about it before it goes to the floor.
So,
That would've been handy.
so
What we're gonna do.
the sponsor is the DPW commission, is that, did the DPW commission sponsor the article, or was the select board the sponsor the article?
The article was put on here, this is how it goes on every year, but the DPW commission hasn't discussed it.
So
It's
we
the
have,
one that gets
the finance
put on
committee
it.
has a public hearing
Mhm.
in 1 week from today.
Yep.
Is the DPW commission going to discuss and sponsor these articles before our public hearing?
I will get that on the agenda for Monday.
There's no meeting.
Tuesday now?
Tuesday the following week.
Tuesday the following week. That's unfortunate. Maybe I'll reach out to John Chase and see if there's any way we can have it for next week.
I think
Behind
behind
you,
John
too.
is here.
Is there any way we can get it for next week?
Jason's gonna be out of state on a meeting.
Okay, but you're the chair, we don't, we can still meet, we have quorum.
We're gonna hold.
Okay. We're gonna hold.
Alright,
I make a motion to pass over this.
we have a motion to pass over Article 6.
Second, I guess.
We have a motion and a second to pass over Article 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 7, I'm guessing is identical.
Make a motion to pass over.
We have a motion to pass over Article 7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass over Article 7. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we have Article 8.
Sorry, I realized you were here, we don't, you speak on the commission did this.
The omnibus budget. Approval, this is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to pay town charges and expenses for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024, and vote to fix salary and compensation of all elected officials of the town in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, effective July 1st, 2024, and make all appropriations for the same or take any other action relative thereto. And this is,
Is there supposed to be a heading on the top of these columns?
I had the attorney actually look at it, and this is what I fixed all his recommendations so far, so.
So the first column is one thing and this is another?
I don't know, I'll check on it, I don't know. Maybe the years, I bet FY 23, FY 24. Again, this is a draft, oh, FY 24, maybe FY 25.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is there an extra copy of what you're gonna read?
So FY 24, FY
I don't think we
25,
have an
should
extra
be
copy,
on
Sam, I'm sorry.
Oh, there is another copy,
What's the-
but
there.
Sandy's gonna bring it down.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep in mind, this is a draft until the town moderator goes through it.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, we're just providing recommendations, you know, for part of the obligations of the town.
I just thought maybe there might be a copy on the table.
I think all those copies disappeared, but I think Sandy should grab one.
Oh, okay,
So
thank
you
you.
should have one in a minute or two.
So does this include the water, the sewer, and the DPW budget?
The only thing this would include would be the highway.
And these are all the numbers that are relatively to the budget here.
With the TA recommendation, yes, to keep ourselves at a level budget.
Seeing how we chose to digest the budget, I make a motion to pass over Article 8. We have a motion and a second to pass over Article 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 9, the omnibus schools. So we have the debt service, Monty Tech, does this include the funding for the chillers?
This is what they gave me, so we went over the budget with them, the Quabbin Regional School District.
Yeah, I remember it was approved at town meeting last year.
It was a pretty substantial number, too.
400,000 or something like that.
Well, amongst all the towns,
Yeah,
yes, yes, our portion was like 132,000 maybe.
I believe that was a set rate per year for each town, right? So.
Well, some
we'll have to
towns,
find out if this was,
some towns chose to fund that wholly, and, town of Barre decided to finance it,
yeah.
I believe.
What were they, chillers?
Yeah, air conditioners essentially, I think it's slightly different maybe. They gave it like a technical, breakdown of it last year. But these numbers match what Monty Tech was
They match
asking
with the-
for
they do
and
match,
the
yeah.
5.08% or 09%.
5.09, yeah.
5.09%, okay. Article 9,
Motion for favorable action on Article 9.
we have motion for favorable action, Article 9,
Second?
motion and second, all in favor? PEG access related cable funds, I mean, this is a general piece, I think that's on there.
I think it includes cameras for upstairs too.
Okay, so
It's
we're
just
moving,
different this year.
yeah, we're moving some, so the motion is to transfer to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $110,000 from the PEG access cable and related funds to operate the public, education, and governmental, PEG, access and cable related fund established pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F 3/4, for fiscal year FY25. And further to appropriate a portion of said funds to complete the Matrix broadband project and to install equipment on the third floor of the Henry Woods building to record public meetings and anything incidental or relative thereto. So this $110,000, this will put similar system up on the third floor.
Yeah,
Mhm.
with a larger space to better accommodate public hearings. And then it also, should include 2 portable systems, like what we've been using at the DPW for other, committees and commissions to use. We're trying to get everyone to start recording all meetings for bylaw. So we're trying to make sure we have that equipment funded in place so that we can get those recorded and get them playing on the channel.
And this is, like, we can legally transfer this funds for this because
That's what it's meant for.
because we're transmitting this over cable access, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's, so any meetings that are, educational, governmental, as we record them, we need to have those playing on the air.
Mhm.
So we'll get those going through.
Can we run both at once?
Equipment wise, I believe so, right? It's,
Switch?
I think they need a bigger,
I'm not sure. I
the-
think we might have
part of the
drinking
funding is for
system.
a change in
Okay,
the server
all right,
system.
that's it.
And that's installation as well, like running wiring and all that?
Yeah, I believe that portion of it was, including the portable cameras, we were assuming it, I think it was, up to 50,000. Theoretically should be less.
Okay.
out of curiosity, I've heard through various meetings you guys talk about like somebody needing, to run all this stuff to like,
Yeah,
you know.
I do.
Can can you pay a salary out of the PEG access fund? Like, or like, pay a stipend to somebody, like, cause
So I
eventually, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Eventually, I'm assuming, like, there's gonna have to be, like, a part-time person or, like, more work pushed off on somebody for this. I just didn't know, cause I know we talked about it a couple of years ago, there's like 500,000 in that fund,
Yeah.
just sitting there, and you can only use it 600,000, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Like-
Yeah.
631.
So I believe we do pay out of PEG access for our contractor who's recording this right now. And so I believe we could still use that for, you know, any costs incurred to do that, as far as salary goes. I think it could get very tricky if we have someone working for the town who's doing that sometimes and not other times, making sure that that's properly paid for the
Mhm.
correct way. So we'd have to figure out how to do that properly if it was someone employed by the town. So, yeah, that would be a hurdle to figure out how to use this for that.
Mr. Lipson.
When all this rewiring occurs, will this device be placed in?
It's gonna be louder.
Someplace else? Excuse me?
It's gonna be louder.
Oh.
It's gonna be bigger.
Well, anyway, will this device be placed in someplace so that us senior people who might have auditory difficulties be able to hear?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can push for that. I think there could be some technical challenges, making sure it's properly cooled and things like that, but I don't see why we couldn't, you know, push for it to be somewhere else, and as long as there's nothing technically stopping us.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure there's a few nooks and crannies in this facility. Just gotta make sure it's cooled,
The
right?
problem with nooks and crannies though is then it starts to heat up and
Yeah,
destroy
yeah,
your,
it needs to be cooled properly.
hardware, you know. I'm not an expert on those servers.
Well, I can't say I'm glad that, you know, because this bylaw was introduced to the town several years ago, and I'm glad that action's finally being taken on this, and we're seeing some positive results to bring the town of Barre and all of its committees up to the 21st century here, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as of now, there's no way to actually enforce it, but the first step is providing the equipment and letting the boards, committees, and commissions, you know, have that equipment to use properly, so we're excited to have that moving forward.
Great. All right, so on Article 10, it's been discussed.
Okay, favorable action?
We have a motion for favorable action
Article 10.
on Article 10.
Second?
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Article 11, revolving funds. So I'm not gonna drain all of this out, but I will, I mean, this is kind of, I'll read through the top here to see if the town will vote to establish for revolving accounts established pursuant to Mass General Law 44, Section 53E and a half, and the town bylaws, Chapter 48, Section 1, for fiscal year beginning July 1st, I believe that should say 2025, or take any other action relative thereto.
And there's no changes to these, right?
Actually, it's 2024 because fiscal year starts July 1st, 2024.
Question on the,
But we'll be starting fiscal year 25 in July 1st.
Right, so July 1st, 2024, I'll check with the attorneys, but I believe because it goes July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, that would be the correct date. I'll double check though.
Yeah, okay, I understand, so fiscal year
Yeah.
of fiscal 25,
Right,
beginning
25
on
starts
July,
2024
okay,
to
I get you,
2025.
yep. A little play on wording there.
Yeah, it's confusing with all the dates in there.
I've never understood why this is.
I would just say fiscal 25.
Yeah.
on the electrical inspector one, is that, is it the electrical inspector and the building inspector, or just the electrical inspector?
So the revolving fund approval to spend the fund is the building inspector for the electrical inspector.
Okay.
So it'd be for the electrical inspector.
Okay.
Yeah, so you got it's all under the building, right? You got the electrical, the plumbing,
And that's basically paid by
Gas.
permits.
Yes.
Yep.
Fees, permits, yes.
so in a way it's self-funded, right?
Yeah.
In a way.
And there's that.
Police chief, civilian safety classes, the Barre Fall Dam, so the Barre Fall Dam, and do we have updated can we get updated balances for the public hearing on the revolving funds?
We can get that for you. Do you want the balances?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
right, so that's Article 11. Any further discussion on Article 11?
Motion for favorable action on Article 11.
We have a motion for favorable action on Article 11.
Second.
And with a second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone not in favor?
No.
All right. Article 12, Chapter 90, grants. To see if the town will vote to accept any and all state highway assistance funds authorized by the state legislator and approved by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division under the so-called Chapter 90 Highway Assistance Program to be expended for the maintenance, repair, and construction of town roads in anticipation of reimbursement under the direction of the Select Board for work on roads located on the state aid primary system as approved by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division. And further to authorize the treasurer collector with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow money from time to time during fiscal year 2025 up to reimbursable amounts for the period of July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 in anticipation of reimbursement of said highway assistance in conformity with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 6A, or take any action relative thereto. That's a mouthful.
You're a moderator. You can be a moderator.
I think we do this every year now. Like, I brought my water, so I'm gonna need some in a little bit. It's, I mean, this is a general article that I believe is on every town meeting warrant. We wanna make sure we get reimbursed for the work done on the roads, right?
I believe this also allows the town to borrow essentially that money until we get the reimbursement.
Okay.
I think it approves us approving bike lanes if the state wants them to.
But with tip funding, it would,
Yeah.
there would have to be some form of.
I haven't seen Lee out here though.
No, we haven't used tip funding for a project since, I believe the Common. So, and that was prior to the Healthy Transportation Directive from MassDOT is what requires bike facilities on all tip projects now, and other things that come through the state and that, by those methods.
Great.
Motion for affirmative action.
Of affirmative action, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Favorable action?
Favorable.
We got a motion for favorable action.
Second.
Yeah. And we have a motion and a second for favorable action on Article 12. All in favor? Aye. All right. Article 13, so this is I think we looked at this briefly, right? On the last meeting, we had a glimpse of this. So this is the local options mails tax. It's written as, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of, I'm just gonna hyphenate this, MGL Chapter 64, Section 2, as to impose a local sales tax upon the sale of restaurant meals originating with the town by a vendor at the rate of 75% of the gross receipts of the vendor from the sale of restaurant meals, or take any other action relative thereto.
It's actually .75.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so 0.75%?
0.0075. Yes.
Okay.
So while I was actually trying to get information for you tonight, I stumbled across what we actually get for, Sam had actually mentioned this at the select board meeting.
Yeah.
How much do
I
we
even used
actually
my
get?
highlighter on
So
this
I was
one.
like, oh, so I just printed the Worcester County, I mean, I have the full blown one, but it's like 11 pages, so I just did Worcester County, I did Hamden, and I did Franklin, just so you see. So this is 2024, the one I gave you, so it's fiscal year 24 that we're doing. And you'll see that they reported for September, December, and March, so we still have another quarter left. And just like, look, I know Corey had mentioned Athol the other night at the select board meeting, and they're bringing in already $199,629. They still have 3 months left. I know it's, that's a lot of money, but I think that it would be a great revenue for the town of Barre.
I mean,
And one-
there are quite a few other towns.
Yeah. I think if you go out to eat with your family in a different town, you're probably paying this. except that town gets to keep it.
Exactly.
You know, and here, I was doing the math out when Tammy was showing me. I think if my family eats out 5 times a month, it might cost us $2 extra, like, for the whole month. It's like, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah,
Has anybody talked to the local businesses about this, see what their feeling or take that was?
So, no, I have not talked to the local businesses, it technically falls on, the burden falls on us going out to eat, you know, it doesn't really,
So it doesn't affect the restaurants at all?
it's not really effective.
The bit of feedback I've heard from restaurants has been, more of a concern about the paperwork and the burden that would cause, more so than the financial burden itself, which would be passed on to customers. It's more about that aspect of it that's gonna be potentially more challenging to restaurants. I think it's definitely more of a concern for some of the smaller restaurants, where some of the larger ones or chain restaurants, it's probably not as much of an impact for.
So they, on the receipts, you have to put something.
it's a local meal tax usually, like, that's on the receipt.
And it has to be separated out as a meals tax, Barry?
I'm
In
not
other words,
No,
at
I
the
don't
end of
think
the
so.
bill, does it separate
I
it out?
don't think it is.
I think it just shows a whole tax and it's
Yeah.
included in
Yeah,
that,
so
yeah.
it's not gonna be changed then, except
Yeah.
by percentage.
It's just paperwork
Right.
that goes to the state that they
Yeah.
have to fill out.
Mhm.
You
If
see
you
like
go to-
Paxton, similar size as Barry, right, in terms of population, probably fairly similar in terms of, establishments to eat at, right, they have, they brought in $23,406 in additional revenue.
We have the market too, like if you ordered a cheeseburger, like you would pay this.
It's any,
Through the
any
market.
prepared meal, that includes, like food trucks that came to town, right, they would be subject to paying
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Stone Cow, like all the out-of-towners going there, like would pay it.
So essentially, on top of the sales tax, which is 6.25, there'd be this 0.75 to bring it to 7%.
That's right.
But yeah, the biggest concern I've heard, just in talking with others, has been about the paperwork aspect of it. There's concern from one person, I need to find out about this, that they would have to separate within their sales food that's prepared versus, say, a bottle of water. So I need to find out about that personally, because that would be a lot of paperwork if that's the case. I'm not sure if that's
I think if they're
accurate.
selling food, the bottle of water is getting taxed at that too.
Yes.
That would be my assumption.
It's also a deposit if it's a bottle, right, so I mean, they're already dealing with, because there's gonna be, I know this for absurd reasons with my job, but there's certain, tax rates on certain items are taxable, like, when you get into it, like paper goods and stuff like that are set at different tax rates, so when you have a mixed receipt, usually the items that are exempt will have like an N, right? So you have the dollar amount and an N because it's exempt for tax. So I think it depends on the SOP that the establishment has. Like Dunkin' Donuts won't have an issue with that. But you get a smaller business, Barre Pizza or Red Tomato, they probably don't have an advanced SOP that's gonna be able to incorporate that in directly, right?
Yeah, so there's balancing that with the revenue, and I mean, I believe you said there was over 200 towns have this implemented.
Yeah,
or
I
over
don't think
300.
you
Yeah, it's
saw
a-
this, I just found
it's-
this,
it's,
if you wanna look at it.
it's actually
This is
worth-
like certain, you can have it.
Barry is in the
It
minority.
just shows you, so I just took Worcester County and then just. sorted
Worcester
it, but it
brings in
shows you how
$3
much
million
you can-
from this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
$3 million, look at Boston, 37 million. Yeah, so it just gives the surrounding towns as to helping us bring in revenue.
And the burden falls on the consumer, it doesn't fall on
Right.
the business itself.
that's part of what makes it interesting, it's not solely on residents of Barre, it's
Mhm.
people who come into Barre, who swing through, Dunkin's on their way to work in the morning.
Mhm.
I was shocked to see how much it actually did really bring in. I knew it brought in money, but when I found that,
Yeah, Rutland does fairly well, I mean, that's a whole position.
we have 3 more months left to go,
It's like a police cruiser every year.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. What does the committee think? What's our recommendation?
I like it.
Me too.
As long as it pays 0.75.
My morning coffee is already expensive enough, so an extra 5 cents is not gonna impact my burden. I mean, we just discussed how the town needs to find other sources of revenue, to maintain, you know, increased wages and other inflationary factors, and we'll see if the town approves this at meeting. But I think this could be an avenue to help provide a small fraction of the relief that we need.
I make a motion, we have favorable action on Article 13.
We have a motion for favorable action,
Second it?
a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Article 14. To see if the town will vote to transfer the amount of $79,000 from the capitalization fund, a sum of money for the purpose of purchasing and equipping a new cruiser for the police department, or take any other action relative thereto. So I think this has always been a topic of discussion. I know I brought it up every year since I've joined the committee. Like, I've gone to those association, the town finance committees, and I feel that the town has set a precedent by approving year in and year out this item. It is essentially transitioning from a capital expense item to more of an operating expense item because of the consistency and the precedent the town has set. Unfortunately, we're unable to put this into the operating budget. My personal opinion is I feel like because that precedent has been set, this should somehow get incorporated into the police department budget to provide an overall holistic view of their annual expenditures. So I know that's difficult for us to do because of the amount and the lack of free cash this cycle. But I also feel that, you know, one of the great things of living in the town is we have a good level of public safety. And the town funds, you know, equipment so it doesn't go into disrepair when it's needed most, right? So.
And hopefully things will start looking up for our budget, where we can start incorporating it into the budget.
Understood. So capital stabilization funds, just to give everyone, we got that number earlier in the meeting. That is funded at $250,431.86. So the funds are there in capital stabilization. That would require a 2/3 vote, will it not? Because it comes from stabilization at town
I
meeting?
will check with the attorney.
Double check on that. Mr. Lipson?
By the way, you can call me Sam, so.
All right.
Mr. Lewis is my father.
Okay.
I've lived here since '76, and I know in '76, the wear and tear of vehicles, cars maybe only traveled, was able to live for 60, 70, or 80,000. Now, cars regularly go over 100, and I've always spoken to the chief in the hopes that he might understand that maybe we could get a cruiser replaced, not as often as he is expecting. He has regularly had new cruisers every certain number of years,
Well, he's replacing
whatever the equation is.
the cruiser that gets replaced is the oldest cruiser in line, which is 6 years old.
So I suggested him in conversation, he and I have lots of conversations, that maybe he might come forward and say that we believe that we don't have to replace one that's 6 years old, maybe we can wait another year and replace one that's 7 years old and go into this program. And that's always been an ongoing discussion. I'm not sure where all the funds come from, they come from various and sundry places. But it would be really lovely if we could delay this one more year, and that would definitely make a little difference in the police budget, and maybe change this from stabilization to have it come right out of the budget.
No, I like the idea. What we don't understand, though, I think, is the cost to repair a vehicle that's 6 years old. Listen, I used to work on cars when I was a lad, and you
So
know,
did I.
working on something from the 70s or 80s where it's carbureted is, and it's a simple machine essentially, is a lot easier than something that's fuel injected, computer driven. The town could actually be at additional financial risk in repair costs for a vehicle that's 6 or 7 years old. I don't think we've done a complete analysis on that. I know we've asked for that before to see if that's something that could be done, but
I think there's also a conservative lead time too, as far as from when you make the purchase to when it actually gets delivered.
yep,
There is
2
a-
years ago, this car was 55,000,
Right.
yeah.
because they totaled
It's a
one,
good point.
and we got it for free, it was nice. Just happened to be the oldest one. How old's your truck, Jay?
Mine?
Yeah.
Let's see, 7 years old? That's the newest one we have.
For the highway, because we got water and sewer, got newer ones, last year?
And we do get that free one, his vehicle, the chief's vehicle, well, free, it comes from the dam.
The dam,
like,
that's
yeah.
the admin vehicle through the revolving account.
And then he passes that down too, I think.
Any further discussion on the Article 14 for the purchase of a new cruiser for the police department?
I see everybody's point. I see Sam's point, I see your point, you know. It's cheaper to just buy a new one instead of paying, you guys are the ones that repair them, so you guys know. You see the vehicles going in there. I know the select board voted in favor for it. I'm not opposed to it, you know, I'm just one person in the town though, so.
The town has, like I said, the town said, that's why I was like, it would almost be better to shift this to an operating expense to see the actual true budget of the police department and the overall. When you do it as an article, you miss out that cost
I agree.
expense.
Yeah.
And the chief could make the decision if he wants to stretch it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
He can.
Mhm. But in terms of an article, the funds are there in the capital stabilization fund. The police chief presented to us.
Do we have any other capital items on the warrant? No.
No, very
Ruggles
small.
Lane, it's not really capital.
No?
I'm
No
sure-
water this year?
The one that's been in the selectmen's hands for 7 years now, it hasn't been purchased, so. We just,
That's not capital.
Cars are getting
There's
almost
no other
expensive as
capital
water, so-
stabilization
No
type
other
requests.
stabilization,
That,
no.
nothing that could be considered to flow through capital
No.
stabilization this time around, right? We did fund capital stabilization, at special town meeting with a larger amount in anticipation of upcoming apparatus purchases from the fire department, and trying to build that fund up to potentially pay for things like loaders and trucks that the DPW needs as well. That's the goal. I know that was one of the goals when I first joined, like, hey, we need a capital stabilization fund in this town.
I would like to actually start a committee on capital stabilization too. We gotta get out of the red first, so we can get there.
Understood.
And then, we do need new equipment for highway and everywhere else, I mean, and we gotta have a plan, cause look where we're at, even with the fire, I mean,
We just got an ambulance out of ARPA.
it's crazy.
Well, that's,
We
goes
haven't
back to
had
that conversation we
Yeah.
had earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like, these buckets are drying up,
Yeah.
And
you
they
know.
needed it, I mean, they hadn't had one forever, so.
Mhm.
And we were fortunate to get a grant for a fire truck, but we need to be preparing to not have those next time we need a fire truck.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Going right to borrowing every time.
There's not enough in ARPA to pay for another police vehicle.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
not
No,
that much
that's
left.
pretty much,
Yeah, I believe that's what we did last year, was
we did.
the cruiser came out of ARPA to help on the budget.
Mhm. Hopefully, we start getting free cash and we can start putting away for our capital and regular stabilization. And then we can start hopefully getting a committee to start looking towards equipment for highway and, police and.
It's nice when we had 580,000 in free cash 2 years ago. That was 2 years worth
That
of,
was,
yeah.
that was a windfall of 2
We
years.
gotta save it, we gotta save it.
All right, so we're on Article 14, the funding of, we're looking for some action here.
I'll make a motion of favorable action.
We're on 14. I'm on 14.
You're on.
We have a motion for favorable action on Article 14, funding of a police cruiser from capital stabilization.
Second.
We have a motion and second for favorable action. All in favor? Aye. Anyone against? All right, and we're on to Article 15. So this is a new one, correct?
It is.
All right, so this one is to see if the town will vote to close Article 15 from special town meeting of 11/26/2012
Yes.
Yeah.
for Ruggles Lane School Improvement Project and to appropriate the balance to the principal portion of the debt exclusion payment due in FY 2025. So why are we seeing this now?
Because we're really going through our books.
Okay.
Yeah, and this 39,000 will go on our principal of what we owe, so this will help us.
It's concerning what's been missed.
At least it's still there.
Having Tammy here now is great, I'm learning a lot from her, but it's concerning what's been missed for a number of years. We're taking care of it now?
And so where would the funding for this come from?
So,
We already have this.
This
is
is leftover
funds
money.
from the project.
Okay, so we just need to allocate the funds and apply it
This is
to the
gonna actually
project.
help us with our,
Okay.
So for a number of years, we've been paying interest on it when we could have just paid down the balance with the leftover.
yes,
So
yes.
unfortunately, it's cost us some in additional interest, but we're taking care of it now.
All right, so I mean, do we have a motion on Article 15?
Motion for favorable action.
We have a motion for favorable,
Second.
motion and second for favorable, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 16, overlay and surplus use. To see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Board of Assessors overlay surplus account a sum of money to pay for the deficits in the following grant accounts: CARES Act, Sidewalk Improvement Grant, Economic Development Grant, and Open Space Recreation Grant. And it looks like the overall shortfall is $212,690.59 to pay these deficits, with an amount going to the CARES Act and $151,534.59. An amount going to sidewalk improvement grants of $41,156. An amount going to economic development grant of $10,000, and an additional amount going to open space and recreation grant for $10,000. With all that being said, walk us through this.
So it was brought to my attention when I came here that these items were in a deficit. So we had the select board write a letter to the Board of Assessors asking them, because they had an abundance of money in their abatement and exemption account. So we had asked them if they would allow to give us these funds, and luckily they did. This abatement and exemption account is basically, it's their account, so not even the annual town meeting could take this out. We would need the Board of Assessors to allow it to happen, and they are thankful, and we thank them a lot, saying thank you for letting us do this, because this is gonna actually help us clear us up and get us back into hopefully a fresh start. If this does not happen, then we will continue to hit deficit going forward. So this is a great way for us to start fresh, and hopefully our books will start looking better.
And so do we have a good understanding of what happened with the CARES Act grant? So we talked about this briefly, I think, last meeting. So CARES Act, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, this was the initial funding from the federal government when the pandemic occurred.
So this was like the very first one. It was right before ARPA funds.
Okay.
So what happened was they said, okay, the towns are allotted, for example, I'm just gonna estimate a number, I really don't know what town of Barre was estimated. Say $200,000. Go ahead, that's what you're allotted. You go ahead, it's almost like a reimbursement grant. You go out and you spend it, and now what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to send in a reimbursement form to the state to get these funds back to us. I guess it never happened. I can't really tell you. I was not here, so I believe it's the revolving of my seat that, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff might have got missed, so.
And is that the same for the other grants here, the sidewalk improvement grant,
Yes.
economic development? And what year was the sidewalk improvement grant?
That I do not know. I can
Okay.
find out for you.
Yeah.
I
Either
believe
way, it's
that was-
deficit, so.
I believe that's what funded the sidewalks at South Barre, right?
No.
No?
No, I believe that was a study they did for the feasibility of putting a sidewalk from the center of town to Quabbin Regional High School.
Quabbin, yeah.
I believe that's what that was.
Do you know what year was that?
All of the work that we did was funded by us. That was not
Okay.
anything to do with this.
Those were the articles that we discussed at prior meetings, correct? Yeah, there was outstanding articles on the DPW from, I think before, maybe Mr. Lipson, Sam was here, back when they were voted on. Maybe Brian as well.
Brian was probably.
Well, I can't remember. I was here.
Basically,
Don't
the
recall.
stuff we did for like South Barre was articles that had extra money in there that was never expended. So we cleaned up all those accounts and did those
Yeah,
improvements.
they were just
with
kinda
the
hidden
money
there.
we already
Yep.
had.
So that 41,000 wasn't actually spent on sidewalks, it was
No.
spent on the study to put in
I
sidewalks?
believe so. I had
Yeah,
nothing to do with
yeah.
it.
No, yeah.
That was before, this was a conversation that was before, and the sidewalk never got put in, right?
No.
It was this was just a study. When I first started, there was, I think some of those articles were initially intended to help fund that, but it was really wasn't the best way to do it. It should have been like a sidewalk stabilization fund, that way it would have been a revolving type of account that wasn't an article, one lump sum of money, right?
Mm.
I think my assumption there, from our conversation, is that sidewalks probably not realistic without tip funding.
Yes, I believe that must be the same as the CARES Act. There was a grant that was approved
Yeah.
and the town expended the money, but the grant was never.
Exactly, it's like a
Yeah.
reimbursement
Right,
grant.
never
Would
reimbursed.
probably have nothing to do at all with you. Definitely was a grant that just came in that someone must have went out for. Definitely not highway, would definitely probably be on this end. And it was just never
Yeah.
put in.
I remember there was conversation on that. It was like when I first started this. Yeah, we had.
It might have been in between
Yeah,
TAs.
Which time?
Which in between, yeah.
I thought the I's were dotted and T's were crossed in that instance, but you know,
But
you never
anyway, we
know.
gotta straighten this out.
We do have to straighten this out, and this will get the town clear. As far as we know, there's no other this will clear everything up in one
This is
shot.
supposed to clear us up, yes.
Okay.
Being responsible is not fun sometimes.
So, I guess I'll make a motion for favorable action. On Article
Sammy,
16.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So we
Thank
have.
Jesse too.
Yes,
Hmm.
Jesse
Thank
too,
Jesse,
for
too.
the Board of Assessors.
Yeah, what is that account usually used for?
That's,
Assessing boards.
go ahead, Jesse.
So that account is usually used to pay for abatements or exemptions. So for example, if you're a veteran with a service-connected disability, you're entitled to a certain amount back off of your taxes. Or if you apply for an abatement that's found that you're overvalued for some reason, the refund that they get on their tax bill, that comes out of that account. So any sort of exemptions or abatements.
And how much is in that account now?
The total, I don't remember the exact amount, there's, I wanna say a couple $100,000,
Yeah.
no, it's just under that, it's more like 180, I think.
And it's been there a long time.
Yeah, it's something that we have to have a decent amount in reserve for, because we pay on average, I wanna say it's anywhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 per year out, but depending on how close we are to the levy limit, we might not be able to put in the amount of money to match that every year, so we have to keep a buffer in case we have a heavy year where there's a lot of abatements. For example, this most recent season, we're already pretty far above what we usually are, just because we had a couple of big accounts that got abatements granted.
So we did have a motion for favorable action on
Yes, we
Article
did.
16.
Yes, we did.
I second that.
And we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 17, DPW Water Sewer Union Contract. So to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds Retained Earnings Account a sum of money for the purpose of funding and implementing the first year cost items of the collective bargaining agreement between the town and the noted unions, or take any other action relative thereto. So this is moving $25,200.25 from Water and Sewer Enterprise retained earnings account, and to fund the agreement between the town of Barre and the Teamsters Union Local 170. The breakdown is from sewer retained earnings $18,179.75, and water retained earnings $7,020.50.
Make favorable action.
Did you have any comments on that? Okay. We have a motion for favorable action.
Second.
We have a motion second for favorable action on Article 17. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Compensation for a part-time assessor. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Assessors to appoint one of its members to a paid part-time position under their supervision as allowed by GL Chapter 268A, Section 21A, and to fix the salary of such appointee and to take any other action relative thereto. So Jesse, you wanna come walk us through this, cause this, yeah, you come on up, yeah, cause this wasn't on the budget, right, the operating budget?
Right, so this is something that we've requested in past years, and it's not something that requires raising or appropriation of separate funds beyond what we requested in the next article. But, so this is generally, I forget the exact verbiage of the MGL article that's referenced, but basically any committee, any board is not able to hire out one of its own under its own supervision for any sort of paid purpose. This would just allow us, if the need should arise, to pay one of the board members to assist in data collection for the purpose of complying with Department of Revenue cyclical inspection guidelines. It just lets us have another potential body who has the experience in the assessing field that we can pay. So there's no real set salary decided on that. This just gives us the capacity to have that conversation and say, okay, we need an extra person to help us with data collection. One of the board members can do it for whatever amount is decided at the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do that.
And you had this last year and the year before
Yep.
too, right?
Yeah, it's shown up pretty consistently in past warrants.
So this is just like the general article we've seen in prior year, right? Okay.
Yeah, it just lets us hire one of our board members to help out with data collection.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion?
Favorable action on Article 18.
We have a motion and second for favorable action on Article 18, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 19, a resolution to file and accept grants with and from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for the Parklands Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Program for Improvement to High Plains Park. So this is new.
Yes, it's new.
So this says, whereas High Plains Parks is by and far community-wide asset improvements to this facility are town priority as evidenced in the most recent open space and recreation plan. I'm just kinda skimming through here. So walk us through this. It's a cost of $200,000 and there's a grant that the town needs to accept. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Not exactly. There's no grant at this point. This is to apply for a grant. So, we've allocated $200,000 out of ARPA. By passing this, it allows us to, instead of using that 200,000 directly for the park, it allows us to go after this grant, and if we are awarded that, it'll be an additional $100,000 for additional improvements to the park. So it'll be, a total of $300,000 that we can use for improvements. So it's just an opportunity to take what we're already putting towards the park and use that to try and get additional money through the parks grant.
And this has to also go through, so this writing has to be actually approved by, the person that's in charge of the grant. Her name's Melissa Crine. I had to, CMRPC assisted with it, and then I had to send it off to her, Melissa. I even had to go to a workshop on it. And then, all these workshops are going to get these grants for us, so hopefully it comes through. And then from there, she goes ahead and she did approve this. They always want you to make sure it gets approved, because if it's not exactly written the way it is, then it could get
Then
not
if we,
approved.
then if we were awarded the funds, we might not be able to accept it.
Exactly,
Can't
So
we,
this wording has been approved by them.
yes.
can we if we get the 100, take 100 out of ARPA that we were gonna pay in the park, put 200 into the park, put that other 100 into that other park,
That
take that 75 and buy the police car?
it
Like, can we,
entirely depends on how and when it's awarded, because we have to have all the funds for ARPA designated by the end of the fiscal year. And so it's gonna be very close, if we find out we're awarded this or not by then.
Yeah, we won't know until maybe November. I don't know,
Yeah,
we're gonna know.
It's a possibility. Well, actually, no, I don't think it is, because we're saying that we're matching with 200,000.
That's
okay.
right,
Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
I don't think we could do that, because we're stating in here
Yep.
for the grant that we're putting that much towards that.
Right.
Can you do the basketball court over?
So, yeah. I mean, that's exactly it, is,
Yeah.
What we're looking at for the playground portion isn't really going to change. What this would do is $100,000 for other improvements around the park. So we can look at the basketball court, we can look at, parking aspects, we can look at potentially, I know one person we talked to was like, oh, the state loves snack shacks and things
Yeah,
like
there's a
that
lot
that
of
bring
things.
people in.
It'd be a really nice up
As
for
far
the
as
town.
soccer games going on. up
It's a
there.
great field down there.
Yeah.
Like,
Beautiful.
Just improvements to the field in general, so if we get that, that would go towards other improvements around the park.
But do we have a plan in place that, we know how much it's gonna cost? I mean, do we have a plan for the 100,000 or the 200,000?
For the 200,000, we have,
Proposals.
a handful of proposals for the
Proposals.
playground that we need to,
Okay.
essentially decide on. And then the other 100,000, we don't have a specific plan yet, so we need to have that together before, I wanna say middle of July.
Well, first we have to get accepted.
So,
Yeah.
Spending the money, yeah.
Once we get funded, then we can,
Yeah, there's
Run with
a
it.
number of steps to this that we're working through, and
So
enough
this,
steps that Tammy had to go to a workshop.
so this is like a preemptive,
Mm-hmm.
approval to accept the grant if we receive it versus
Exactly.
it getting the grant and then needing to get the approval to receive.
exactly.
Yeah, they want to be sure that, I mean, typically towns aren't using ARPA funds to match, which we are able to do. We've verified that because it's a state grant, not a federal grant. That's where the conflicts come in. So typically, when these park grants are done, it's money that's raised and appropriated at town meetings. That's why they require this. They don't wanna give out an award and then find out that the matching funds aren't gonna be held up. So, this is their standard procedure.
Yeah, is there a challenge with the time constraints because ARPA funds running out by the end of the?
So in the workshop, believe it or not, they actually mentioned the ARPA funds, because obviously there's a lot out there that are using the ARPA funds, so they're hoping to have a determination hopefully by October, November. I'm gonna go with November because it's always late, so hopefully we'll know
Yeah.
if we get the grant or not.
The ARPA, I was just reading about Marlboro. I mean, they put a boardwalk on a lake with like $1.5 million in ARPA funds. I was like, that's,
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing.
Not
what
on
you can do
Was
with
it,
Beautiful.
some town up on the North Shore had to pay it back. They did like the police salary out of it, and they had to pay it back. The
Well, yeah,
police
you can't
chief's
do
There's
salary.
three
operating,
things
yeah.
you can't do,
Yeah.
one's operating, one's debt, and there's
Salem, I
something
think it
else.
was.
They
You
got pretty
cannot use it.
lenient after, like, originally it was just
For
for
users, yeah.
wastewater, right, or road water. I don't know,
Retention and
yeah.
recruitment of new
Bro-
employees.
Broadband, right?
Now
It was
you
like
can't give it to
3,
the
and then
employees.
they're like, oh, we're gonna open that up to everybody. All
So
right,
what
so
happened then, that goes back to the state from other towns.
No, we don't want that.
that,
They'll disappear into the void.
that is article number 19.
Take a favorable action.
So we have a motion for favorable action on Article 19.
Second.
Motion and second for favorable action on Article 19. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 20, so this is the assessor's recertification of properties to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow or transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay for costs associated with the assessor's recertification of properties, special appraisal expenses, cyclical reinspection, and annual interim adjustments, and anything incidental or related thereto, or take any other action. And this is to move the town to vote to transfer a sum of
It's
$35,000.
actually 25,000, that's. the number.
25,000?
Yep,
$25,200 from an unknown account to pay for costs associated with the assessor's recertification. And the breakdown is FY 29 recertification, 10,000, cyclical reinspection, 6,000, special appraisals, 1,500, interim valuation adjustments, 7,700. So, walk us through this, Jesse. I know it's kind of a common thing for the Board of Assessors to put on the, it has been a couple of years.
Right, usually this is something that we would write in some way, shape, or form every year. For the past couple of years, partially due to the fact that we were doing pretty well with what money we already had on reserve, and also due to the changing of the seats when I took over for Rachel Carney, after she took over for Eileen White. But this is something that we've done before. So basically, the total amount is to pay for a number of separate line items that we have that we need to pay for over the next 10 years or so. So the 2029 recertification, 2029 recertification is something that we have to do for every 5 years that the state makes us do. We're actually in a recertification year right now. And what that means is basically the Department of Revenue takes a very, very close look at all of our data, and they have certain requirements that we have to meet in terms of data collection. And so every 5 years, our office always hires out a third party, which can be very expensive to assist us in that data collection. This most recent year, the cost for the contract is going to be about $18,000. And so what we're trying to do is in the past, we try to put in a certain amount of money to meet what we project might be the cost for the next 5-year period. So looking back a little bit, one of the other vendors that we have used in the past was Vision Government Associates, and their amounts we kind of lucked out this year in getting such a low bid at $18,000, whereas in the past, we've paid somewhere close to $30,000 to $40,000 for this third party to do what they need to do. And in fact, this year, their bid was about $30,000. So we're estimating if we raise $10,000 this year and then a roughly equivalent amount perhaps in future years, that'll get us back up to where we need to be to have the amount necessary to pay for this vendor to assist us with the 5-year recertification period. The next item, the cyclical re-inspections, that's also something that the Department of Revenue requires us to do. So cyclical inspections refer to a 10-year window where we have to visit every property in town and do an inspection of that property to assess its taxable value at least once every 10 years. And so this kind of relates to the other article where we can have the option to hire out one of our board members, where usually we pay them out of this because it's inspections for the purposes of cyclical inspection compliance, so that we're making sure we're getting those properties at least once every 10 years. We're asking for some more money just because we have had a recent conversation with a representative of the Department of Revenue, and they want us to do more full, complete measure and list inspections of the interior of a property, not just external inspections. So we are going to be making more of an effort to do that, but in the event that we need to hire someone to help us with that, that is going to be a greater expense than just doing exterior inspections, just because full inspection takes more time.
So that's something new. In the years I've been here, they've never come in your house to
Right.
inspect your,
It's
measure anything in your house.
The verbiage of the Department of Revenue guideline basically just stipulates that you have to do an inspection once every 10 years. But if we do a full interior inspection, that gives us much more reliable data to make sure that the assessed value isn't too high or too low per property. And lately, the Department of Revenue has been cracking down on assessment in general, trying to get local offices to get more accurate data. So that's something that I've been trying to do, is trying to do full interior inspections since I started. So it's something that the state has told us we need to do to be in compliance. For the other parts of it, the special assessments, that refers to another type of extra expense. There is a state law now that requires us to hire out an expert for the purpose of valuing 504 utility companies. That would be like Mass Electric or New England Power that generate some of the utilities here in town. So we've been paying a company called Bishop and Associates to assist us with that for the past few years. Historically, those have cost about $1,000 per year, but that price might increase, so we need to raise the money to make sure we have that every year to pay for that in the future. And then the last thing for the interim costs that we're asking for. So that refers to costs to cover what's called an interim year adjustment. This is another requirement that the Department of Revenue puts on us, where we're not, even though we're being recertified every 5 years, we also have to make sure that we update our values constantly every year. And so, again, because of the volume of properties and the staffing that we have, historically, we've always had to pay a third party, usually Vision Government Solutions, to assist us in adjusting our values and making sure that all of our data complies with the regulations set forward by the Department of Revenue. That being, we have to be within a 10% margin of error of the market value average of a property for its taxable value. So that cost is to cover that interim value adjustment every year that we've had to pay for.
Okay.
So in total, that adds up to
That's a
$25,000.
good analysis, I'll tell you that much. It's deep. So I think the question I have is, so this amount here of the $25,200, right? There are funds from prior articles.
Yes.
On the assessors right now, I think going back 2018, 2019, 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we've spent out of the articles that we've raised every year to cover costs according to everything that I just talked about. But we have articles going back to fiscal year 2019 still unspent so far. But the amounts that we are requesting take those into account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, I got 28. Did you expend the 2018 valuations?
We did. Over the past fiscal year 2023, we did expend amounts out of that funding
Okay.
to pay for the necessary line items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because right now, it's a total $73,586.88 that's unexpended. Is that correct?
Right, that's divided across the articles that we have money still in, but that total is subdivided into those 4 line items: the cyclical, the recertification, special assessments, and interim. So it's not like we can use all of that money for anything. There's specific amounts within that amount that can be used for certain expenses.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I know, I understood. I know we talk about that. I just want to make sure we get a refresher every year. You know, we got some new members on the committee, as well as just to inform the public, you know, so. The question, I think, is where is this money coming from?
I believe we're gonna have to raise and appropriate, right, as we discussed.
Raise and appropriate. And this can't push off to a special, or like after we certify free cash?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Or do you think we need it on the annual, or could we push this to a special and like after we have free cash recertified?
That wouldn't be ideal. I understand that, you know, the budget is very tight, and we have to be responsible and careful with it, but the request that has been put forward by the Board of Assessors is for, the timing for it would be for the town meeting.
Alright. I just don't know where we're gonna raise and appropriate the funds from.
We are very slow.
I think that's the challenge. We could say raise and appropriate, but where does the money come from? That's the challenge that we're gonna have,
Property tax is probably the main source of revenue in the town, right?
we were like 82% residential property taxes are
Closer to 90%.
90%.
Last, I don't remember the last time I looked, but it was about 90% residential, 5% commercial, 3% industrial, and 2% other.
And what about the state pilot? That was in the revenue
For what?
pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. The state, cause isn't that in debate to go up?
That I don't know anything about it.
$1,000. Yeah, I don't.
As far as the state of land
What's
goes,
that?
Yeah, I thought the state senate was debating on increasing that above the governor's budget, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, the 1,000 to 2,500 or something
Yeah,
like that.
every dollar counts, you
Yeah.
know?
yep. I haven't heard on that. I know at one point there was actually some proposals to pay per gallon of water taken out of some of these areas that we have, that Ann Goby was putting forward before she was transitioned into a different position, and that, as far as I understand, is not happening anymore, so.
I think the challenge with our, is that we don't have a source, and we gotta be fiscally responsible. I understand the need. I think the town needs to understand where the money's gonna come from before we can offer a favorable, that's my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anybody else in the committee has another. We can, is this something the town can look at and we can discuss at the hearing next week in further detail to see if we can find the funds to allocate towards this expense?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just put it together.
Yeah.
I told you when I said we don't have much of a budget left.
Sam, I'll give you a minute. I just wanna we'll run behind here.
I'm not as astute as you folks are, because you're doing a hell of a job, but we have new revenue theoretically coming from the meals tax. And
Well, if that's gonna get approved by
Well,
town
once it
meeting,
gets
first, you
approved, we would
can't
get
count the
that.
chickens before they hatch, you know?
But if it were approved.
If it were approved, but then it's gonna take a fiscal year to see those results, right?
Oh, I
So,
see.
so we're not gonna immediately see the impact.
I'm glad you understand better than I.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm glad, but I'm glad that you're glad.
In my head, it's like, I look back to the police car, right, that brings in no revenue, right, and it's $79,000, and here is a investment into 80-something% of our revenue coming in, and like, as a taxpayer, I'd rather like guarantee our revenue coming in.
Oh, no, understood. But this doesn't qualify as a capital expense, so we don't have that, we don't have a stabilization, I mean, we have a regular stabilization
Yeah.
fund, which is $836,000. But what's the recommendation for, what is it, 10% of the operating budget?
I'd have to check on that with the stabilization.
So I think the town is still, and every year we increase our operating budget, so therefore the recommendation for the minimum amount of stabilization increases, but we haven't really put a substantial amount into stabilization in at least 3, possibly 4 budget cycles, if not beyond, in terms of anything over $100,000.
Basically, the assessors do bring us in they are our source of.
Yeah.
Oh, no, 100%.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
I look back to the $580,000 in free cash that we had that we just spent on.
Well, some of that went to that capital stabilization, some of it went to OPEB, some of it went to regular stabilization.
Yeah, you're right. We did, we transferred.
There was quite a few
Yeah.
transfers that year.
I mean, we also don't have all our new growth in quite yet, so, I mean, you know,
The other night at the select board meeting, I think it was brought up like half of the money, like 1 year, and half of the money another. Would something like that work?
Do you mean for, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean just,
Like funding it, not that we even have half the money to like fund it with, but like, would it work if like, instead of it being 25, it was, you know, 12,275, like, split it into 2 years.
Well, then next year, you're probably gonna have the same amount next year, right?
Oh, okay,
He did bring
Yeah,
it
it's-
down, he, I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that, he
Yeah,
asked him,
for-
Yeah,
he
he
did bring
definitely
it
brought it
down.
up.
For a while, I don't remember the year ranges, but, I think it was fiscal year 2018 through 2020, or might have been the year on either end of that. We basically wrote out the same amounts, although we asked for a little bit more back then, before it was 20,000 for the recertification. So I did have a conversation with the Board of Assessors, and those are the amounts that they believe we would need to be responsible for, this coming year.
And this is the state record, we need this for the state.
Yeah, you need the,
Pretty much all of this
Yeah.
is to comply with Department of Revenue standards. If it's any consolation, regarding new growth, so new growth is something that we gather data on throughout the year, and then that's looked at probably November, December, when our tax rate is set, at the end of the calendar year. And on average, we've had about, on the high end of 5 to 6 million in value per year, which translates to about $90,000 to $100,000 added to the tax levy growth. I have been doing, one of the reasons I'm doing more physical inspections and also making a greater effort to get out there and gather data is so that we can capture more new growth. Right now, we're sitting at, and granted, this still has to be approved by the state, so it might change. But right now, we have about 2.6, almost 2.7 million captured, which is about 36-ish thousand added in tax levy growth. So we're in pretty good shape right now. I think last year we were at about 1.8 million at this point. So I am definitely doing my best to bring in as much new growth money as possible.
oh, that's appreciated. And is that growth realized in the revenue report?
So he did give me the 36,000, I did put that in my report, yes, well, for me to offset my budget.
Okay.
What do I do with that?
Just with regard to breaking it up, is there an initial amount that could be appropriate at this point, and then the rest funded through a special town meeting once we have certified free cash? I mean, if we could look at potentially a way to do that, instead of, not putting off till next year, but funding it once we have free cash. Or does it really all need to be upfront?
So potentially, these were the amounts that the Board of Assessors felt would be most responsible to be raised with the timing requested. We do have some money from past articles to cover our costs, but generally speaking, because this is something that we constantly have to be spending money on, because we're constantly in keeping with cyclical reinspection guidelines and also prepping for the next recert. So that we're not asking for a large amount of money all at once to pay for an upcoming recert year.
Yeah.
This is something that we have to request in these amounts, basically. Sorry, I can't give you.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe bump this up on the article number in future meetings, so it's not like we, in the back. What shall the committee choose to do with Article 20?
I'd like to give it more thought and, I mean, there's no magic way to find the money, but, I'd like to figure it out.
I mean, we raise and appropriate, and then, so if I'm correct, right, if we raise and appropriate, you don't have to pay that, you have to pay that in the fiscal year, right? You don't have to pay that out ASAP?
No, so raise and appropriate, it's something that they actually go under the tax rate recap, and they put it in it's on page number 4.
Yep.
And they put all the raise and appropriations, and then not until November we'll see what we actually have left. Like what would be our highest, correct if I'm wrong, the ceiling amount,
I
but,
believe so, yes.
we can go ahead and figure out what is left after we put our budget through. I mean, this, you gotta realize, is all on estimates, right? So,
Mhm.
I'm of course being very fiscally responsible, so
Yep.
I don't want us, worst case scenario, we do end up doing 2.5. I mean, I hate to see that happen, I don't think anybody wants to see that happen, but
And this is only a draft of the warrant, right? You said,
this
John?
is just a draft.
This is the draft.
Dan's recommendation, could we move this up?
I mean, we can pass it over and discuss it next week at the
Yeah.
public hearing in
Mhm.
further depth.
Like move
Oh, as far as article
to
number?
the beginning of the meeting, yeah.
Well-
That might be an old question, but do you know if she would be?
I can put it in like the beginning, like
Yeah, I mean, I just in terms of us, like, you and favorable.
Oh, yeah, okay,
He
okay,
gave it
okay.
to me on.
I thought you
Friday,
meant
so
like,
We're fine.
so it's a full house.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
okay.
put it in the beginning.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
Well, I mean, it's something, I think we're eventually gonna have to provide action on this that is favorable, it's needed. Having that blank space there, though, that's the challenge that I'm having with saying, hey, let's do this right now. I think we have to have the language in there for us to provide a favorable action that says that we wanna raise and appropriate or take the, like, we need to know where the funds are coming from.
Jesse and I actually just had a conversation this morning, cause I was asking the same exact
Yeah.
question. As
So-
to where it was supposed to come from, which is why it is blank.
If we put raise and appropriate, like, something needs to be in there, and then I think the committee can take further action. But we did have a motion to pass over. Was that correct?
Yeah.
So there's a motion and a second to pass over Article 20, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So this one I'm still waiting for, you see Article 21, I'm still waiting for the language from the attorney. I have not received that yet, so that's why it's like, but John,
Yeah, I can.
explain that to.
Well, let's announce what the article is for the public first here, so. Article 21 is for the Barre Reservoir Dam, and this is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money in the amount of $15,000 to,
To undergo a study for access to the Barre Reservoir Dam. So essentially where this comes from, there was a report issued by the state, and they've said that they're willing to repair, breach, or partial breach Barre Reservoir Dam. Currently, we do not own this dam. It's on an abandoned parcel, a company that went defunct in, I wanna say, the late 70s. So the state has said this is high risk, we wanna repair it, however, or we wanna do something with it, so to mitigate risk. They came to the town and said, do you want us to get rid of it and turn this reservoir back into a stream? Do you want us to do a partial breach, or do you want us to fix it as it is? The overwhelming support at those meetings from the town was to do a partial breach that lowers it, but retains the existing reservoir level. In order to do that, though, the state requires us to take possession of the parcel it's on. That's not actually an issue, because no taxes have been paid on that parcel since the 70s. However, there's no public access to it. It's locked in by privately owned properties. There is a private property that allows public to go through it, but that's not something we can rely on to maintain this dam going forward. So essentially, this is on here to put to the town, if we want to go forward in, saving this dam through a partial breach, this is the first step in doing that. This would be to fund a study to determine if anyone would be willing to donate parcels to us, or if we would have to purchase parcels or easements right of way, some way to get to the dam. So unless someone's willing to donate, this is just an initial drop in the bucket. If someone is willing to donate, this could cover the entire cost to get that access to that dam, and then the state will take care of the cost of doing all the breach work.
yeah, I did attend a couple of those meetings where the state presented, and, there was a good amount, mostly of butters, obviously that were, it is a beautiful property up there. For those of you, anyone that's gone hiked, like the East Quadrant Land Trust owns a parcel up there, and I understand that aspect.
Where is it? Is it the one that goes down Sanderson Road?
No.
It's up over.
That's a different dam. One thing that I was gonna say to the board and to the finance, I'm not sure how much research you guys have done. I think a couple of you guys have gone out there and looked at it. The dam was breached when I was 6 years old. It was taken out and removed. So that the dam is classified as a high risk at its original state. Nobody's ever looked into it to see that it's not a high risk dam anymore. We ran into the same situation with our town of Barre water reservoir. They had it listed as a high risk. We reinvestigated, it was determined that it was a low risk dam, and there was no action necessary. I think it'd be very smart and beneficial for the community to look into this and see that the dam has already been breached. the high risk is not there anymore. It is not a high-risk dam at this point in its life, and, you know, there's no action necessary. That this $15,000 would be more
Rather give
smart
it to
to
the
spend
assessors.
farming to the assessors.
Well, I think,
So,
Where is this dam?
the access, the easiest access to it is off of Williamsville Road, right before Flaherty Road. There's a road that goes down in.
Is Flaherty that dirt road, that little,
It is,
yeah,
yes.
you can, that's, East Quad Land Trail, I mean, you can go, I hiked up
It
there
is
before,
hikes.
there's some
If you
fishing,
go out Flaherty Road,
yeah.
there is a couple parking areas for East Quabbin Land Trust, and you can hike up there too. And you can see that the dam has been removed. It's not there anymore.
What's the distance that you would have to build a road, roughly, half mile?
Probably.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more, actually, to be honest with you.
So, the challenge I see, and I know this is not gonna be well received by most of the community, the abutters, but I had the luxury of growing up on a private lake, right? And so, the people who lived around the lake had to pay a fee. And we were the ones, my parents and our neighbors were the ones that funded all the access to that lake. So since the town doesn't own any property around the lake, what is the advantage for the town to get this involved? Versus like having a cohort formed by abutters to privately fund this?
Essentially, what the state has told us, if we don't take possession of the parcel, they're going to turn it back into a stream.
I thought there was three options.
Stream though, right?
Yeah, it doesn't go any lower than it is.
Sam?
No.
I listened to the presentations of the state, and this is my take, is that the state wants to delete its responsibility for any of these reservoirs, and they want the towns to take over and pay maintenance fees on an annual basis forever that could be increased based on, I guess, the economy. I think we need to think we need to think additionally whether we want to allow the state to give us the responsibility so that they will no longer have it. That's my initial impression.
I would say ultimately this is effectively a litmus test of where does the town as a whole stand on it, not just who showed up to that meeting.
Yeah, no, I
That's
understood.
essentially why it was put this way.
And of course, the people who live around it, they covet this privacy, and they don't wanna do very much, and I would understand it if I lived around there, but, because then I would need through the town to, if I lived around there, that I would need through the town to be responsible for it, and I personally believe it's the state's responsibility, and they're just trying to pass it off.
Well, I think that's the challenge, is that there's no public town access, right? So
So this would be to determine how to get that access.
so this is just a feasibility.
Essentially, yes.
It's like our
Feasibility, and
sidewalk money.
It could be enough to, yeah, enough to cover if someone was donating the legal costs, but if we have to actually acquire land, it's gonna be far more expensive than this. Essentially, if this is turned down, the select board really only has the option of saying, go ahead with the full breach, because we are not taking possession of that parcel.
And do we feel though that this is an appropriate article, given the state of, the finances for the town, like with no free cash? I mean, cause this is something we could just push to special.
When do we need, do you know when we need an answer from the state?
No, they're supposed to come back out again, I have to make an appointment with, have them come meet with you again, so.
Yeah, I don't know how long we can push it out, but we might have some flexibility there.
I would like to see if the town gets, the amount of certified free cash to, rather than, cause then again, this doesn't count as a capital, like we're looking to
Right,
raise and
can't do
appropriate,
that.
and then we're depleting regular stabilization,
Does
which
it show up-
essentially is a small portion of the overall residents that are impacted by this, right?
Does it
That-
show up on Google Maps?
The reservoir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Has anyone been in contact with East Quadrant Land Trust of their interest in the property? Because they're a direct abutter, and they already have property in the land trust, East Quadrant Land Trust.
I think they had some representatives at the meeting, is that right?
The meeting I was at, they didn't have, no one was there, but this was the one that state presented, that,
Right.
if I recall, the state presentation was based off of, risk. If there was a breach of the dam and the potential impact, downstream impact to South Barre, right? And, the overall damage assessment is the number they came up with, right? It was like, if that dam was to breach at full capacity, there could be loss of life. I mean, there was a little bit of fear factor in there, right? But it could also have, not many people probably in South Barre have flood insurance either. So,
No.
So,
Yeah,
they took it out, you say, 38 years ago?
So, sorry, the East Quabbin Land Trust definitely could be an option. I think, this study would determine who would be an option for that. I suppose the other way, it'd be risky on our part if we took possession of it in order to sell it to like East Quabbin Land Trust if they wanted to preserve it that way. If they were interested in preserving it to that extent, that they wanted to take responsibility for the dam, potentially, I think we might have to take possession of it until it's rebuilt and then transfer possession. It's, again, that's kind of risky on our part to do that without
It's-
having access to it.
it's,
That's really the only way I could think to do it
yeah.
and make it a private dam.
well, I know, and I get a little sketched out, right, when the state's like, the state doesn't wanna take responsibility, they don't wanna take ownership of it.
Right,
They're like, oh,
right.
the town wants it, and,
There's a reason for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, cause then there's a financial impact, maybe not 5 years from now, but 30
Oh,
years
no,
from now.
There will be an annual impact
Yeah.
if we preserve this dam. There's gonna be maintenance or whatever portion is holding back water that they showed pictures of. I don't know if that's separate from what used to be a dam. I'm not.
Well, there is water,
Have you gone down and looked at it?
no, that's water retained up there, though. I mean, it's, people,
Very little.
There's water-
There's an old gravel roadway that goes across in front of the dam. The dam was breached, like I say, that's probably like around 6 years old. And the water levels dropped, so probably 12 feet, the water levels dropped.
oh, so it was
So,
higher than it
yeah.
is now.
So, I think if anything, if the town should spend any money, it should be hire an engineering firm to go in there and do a risk assessment of their property. So you can then go to the state, well, it is not a high-risk dam, so this alleviates all problems, leave it be, and move on
Yeah.
to the next item that the town should be spending money on.
Because a question I brought up at that meeting as well was, what's the impact downstream impact? Even a partial breach of whatever structure's retaining water there, because that's the other dam, I think, behind the foundry they mentioned. And, is that dam essentially, right now, almost a flood retreat, like naturally, it's over 100 years old, the water that's being held back there now. And you partial breach what's left, so bring your flow down to like whatever it is, 6 feet, 8, I don't know the depths. But, and I asked that question and no one at that meeting could answer the
I
question.
think what they gave us at the meeting was the impacts downstream if it were full up to
Yeah.
the top. And that's not realistic, 'cause it's not getting to that point. And that's why we were talking, the idea that was very popular at that, meeting was to do a partial breach down to the existing level so it couldn't go higher, and then, but also stay at what level it's at currently.
But
Which,
then
you know,
all that water that it was retained, like giving like a Irene, right, like a tropical rainstorm where you're coming through, it's dumping a foot of water. I mean, we see what happened to Vermont a couple times now. Is that structure as it is now, right, today, is that more beneficial to that waterway? I think that's, I think that's a deeper conversation. and
right, that's outside my.
I'm not sure if I would,
When those meetings
Trust
were
the
going
state's
on,
assessment.
like, a lot of people were concerned about it. There was a lot of conversation, like, none of them are here. I don't know, I
The
personally,
I don't think
yeah.
they realize.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
not many people show up to the finance committee meeting.
Yeah.
We got a full
Yeah.
house tonight.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right,
I'd rather get that money.
I think the challenge is the funding at this juncture, right? Like, I know me personally, I'm not opposed to a fund or a study per se, but right now,
Yeah.
I would be, if we're gonna keep this article on, like, I would not recommend this, because we don't have the funds to provide.
I mean, I think that just speaks to the fact that we will need annual funds to maintain it if this is done.
So Jay, you're 23 now, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. It hasn't killed everybody in town, you know, for at least 15 years, so.
What does the committee wanna do with Article, which I think it's potentially Article 21?
The-
Yeah, me too.
I
Unless we
like the
change.
idea of it going to special town meeting, versus giving it a unfavorable, like, I don't know, it's
Well,
just-
we could offer no recommendation at this period of time, or you could offer unfavorable and with the recommend,
Unfavorable at this time.
with the recommendation to reevaluate, or table it, right? You know, don't even bring it up.
Take it off.
Pass over at the,
Pass, they could pack it
Yeah.
and pass over. I just, if somebody can show me where the $15,000 can come from, I think, you know, we'd be in a better position.
I make a motion to pass over it.
We have a motion to pass over Article 21 and a half. And
There you go.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to pass over, and all in favor?
Aye.
So pass over. All right, we're on to Article 21,
So,
the Department of Public Works Special Acts. I'm probably not gonna read everything. I will read the first. I'm not reading everything.
I think the whole thing needs to be read down.
No.
Some stuff in there that
Well,
really needs to be out on the floor here so people can hear it and see what it is.
I'd be happy to read it if you prefer.
I'm gonna just point out, I feel bad for John right now, because there's 3 selectmen and there's only John here.
yeah.
Like,
well, we have,
Yeah.
Mr. Chase is here, and he's part of the DPW commission, correct?
DPW Commission has never heard of this to this point, just for the record.
All right, well,
It was on
let's-
the agenda on.
let's get through, gentlemen, let's get through it. All right, let's get through it first. I know it's gonna be some debate, and I'm open for debate, but let's get through it.
Need more water.
All right, so Article 21, Department of Public Works Special Act, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to petition the general court for special legislation to reorganize the Department of Public Works so as to abolish the Public Works Commission and to make the superintendent of Public Works a position appointed by the town administrator, by repealing Chapter 56 of the Acts of 1988 and replacing it with a new Department of Public Works Act as shown below. Provided, however, that the general court may make clerical or editorial changes of form only to the bill unless the select board approves amendments to the bill before enactment by the general court, and authorizing the select board to approve any amendments which shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of the petition or take any action relative thereto. So, we'll pause there, and we're gonna go and, so, to keep on track with the finance committee members and, you know, conducting the business here, provided in the packet was a copy of the Act of 1988, which is the rule that is on the books today. And this is the act that has created or established the Department of Public Works, which is a combined, it's a commission of the water commissioners, the sewer commissioners, and the board of selectmen. So it's a commission of 9 individuals, that's correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right, so. Before we get into it a little bit deeper here, because with the finance committee, you know, going back to providing that objective viewpoint here, and, you know, this is abolishing a law that's already in effect, I feel is more of a challenge than anything, right? Because we're saying that law or that rule does not work, right? And
Or at least is not best for the town moving
that's an opinion.
Right, right.
Okay.
That's absolutely, that's not.
Yeah, but we're, you know, so by abolishing a law is a little bit different than we had last go around,
Yes.
right? Where we didn't have a law on the books, we wanted to put a law on the books for the town administrator, right?
Yep.
So now the Board of Selectmen has, or the Select Board rather, has, you know, put forth the article here and essentially saying that this rule here is not working. So I wanna get through that portion first. Hold on, Jay.
I just have one question
yeah.
about what you said. I haven't heard anybody from the select board speak of this except for John. So I'm curious if the select board has even said they wanna put this on as an article.
I'm just going by who's sponsored
Right.
on the piece here, and this was sponsored, so the select board has at least 2/3 vote to put this on, is that what's
I
required?
don't believe
We
that.
don't generally vote on every act going in here, but we do favorable and unfavorable for all.
Okay. Has the select board voted on this article yet, favorable or unfavorable?
No, it has not.
So
It was
one select
discussed
board
after
member
this.
can put something on the warrant without the other two's approval?
Generally, generally, most articles go on without the select board seeing them.
Yeah, select board can put an article on, just like any resident can put an article on. with-
No,
Select
but
board can.
you need
Yeah.
10 signatures as a
No,
resident.
as a resident, you need
Right.
10
But
signatures.
a single
Otherwise,
select
the
board member
has to
can?
make an action to put it on.
So with most articles, the town administrator puts them together. If you look back through, most of the ones sponsored by the select board come from discussions with the town administrator. Those get put together and put as the warrant. That's how it goes, typical years. And then we go favorable, unfavorable. I mean, that results in situations like we saw, I believe it was 2 years ago, where it's sponsored by the select board. It had to do with the, council on aging.
Mhm.
Sponsored by the select board, but it was an unfavorable opinion by the select board.
Mhm.
So generally, you know,
Yeah, if
things
it's,
like that, it's still, even if we're unfavorable towards it, it's always good to get the opinion of the town.
no, understood. So, before we get into the nuts and bolts of Article 21, what is the need to abolish the law that's on the book? Like, why is that?
To be clear, it's really replacing what's there with the text beyond that.
It says abolish right in the first line,
So it abolishes what is there,
and there's nothing about the new one that says anything that goes.
and replacing it with a new Department of Public Works Act. So it's abolishing the old Department of Public Works Act and replacing it with a new Department of Public Works Act.
Okay, and that's what this article is looking to do.
So
So-
what the article actually does, the article would petition the state legislature to replace the act that establishes the Department of Public Works structure in the town of Barre with a new act.
And so, with the current act, and, you know, I'm gonna recognize also we got the chair of the DPW commission here as well. So, with the current act, has the DPW commission, did they bring this forth to the select board to say, hey, what we're doing today isn't working, and we recommend replacing this rule?
So, no, how it started, on February 12th, it initially came forward as establishing a road commission. Sorry.
Establishing a what?
A road commission. So that was on the agenda for February 12th, that meeting actually didn't happen, March 11th, that meeting got moved to the 14th. So it was on the agenda as that for the March 14th DPW commission meeting. A first draft of that was looked at, it was essentially modifying it so that a road commission could be part of it. This second draft is separated those out. The reason for that is now if the adjustments are made to the structure of the DPW, and then a separate article that follows this in that follows this is for the road commission, then the road commission is not established by the state, and the town then has the authority to amend that later, if needed. So we're not going back to the state for more things. So one of the primary drivers on this initially was to make a way to have a road commission that would take some of the responsibility that the select board has overseeing the highway portion of the DPW.
Okay. Before we go any further, I'm gonna open up for questions from the finance committee, on what we've gone through so far.
have you given any thought, instead of repealing and replacing, with just reworking what is currently there? Like, what's not working about it? Maybe make an amendment. So when somebody in town wants to change a zoning,
Yep.
you know, like, they don't repeal the zoning law and then replace it with a new zoning law, they just amend it.
Well, zoning laws are bylaws within the town. This is an act of special legislation by the state. This is the wording that was given to us, essentially, to enact this special legislation, to modify
Well,
the
the-
structure of the DPW department.
But that had to, town meeting had a vote to approve to send this to special legislator back in 1988.
Right. Right, so now this would go to town meeting, and then from there would be sent, if it's approved, would be sent to the state legislature to amend that, or to repeal that and replace it with this.
Okay, I'm still not understanding so I feel like the select board or the town, we need to understand why we want to appeal and replace. Like, I'm not fully grasping, because,
If it helps, I can walk through exactly what it does and what some of those benefits, in my opinion, are.
okay, yeah, we can go through that before I get into
I
it.
do have a question.
Yes.
And forgive me because I am new to this, but why is a decision like this within the scope of the finance committee?
Well, because it's a recommendation. It's a recommendation. I mean, again, going back to, if you look at the mission statement for the finance committee, is to provide the town with an objective viewpoint, right? That elected boards, appointed officials, like, we're supposed to be that, because we're appointed by the moderator. We're not appointed by the select board, we're not elected, right? So we're supposed to have provide the townspeople with that objective viewpoint, and, you know, to provide, like, kind of give what our recommendation would be on all these articles, and that's part of the mission statement for us.
It could cost more money to adopt this, maybe.
Could cost less, we don't know.
Yeah, so I think that's what I'm confused by, is like, what,
Well, that's what we would have to find out.
So,
If how things are done now versus how they would be done in the future, what's different?
yeah, and I'd be happy to get into that if we're,
Does anybody have any other like, we haven't really got into the full, like, nuts and bolts of what's proposed.
right.
We're still on abolishing the rule that's in place. So if you wanna walk us through why, no one's recommended, so I just wanna be sure I'm clear. There's been no recommendation from the select board.
Right.
The DPW commission hasn't made a recommendation.
No,
We
they
don't
have
know
not
about
seen this latest version of it. This,
We haven't seen any version of it, just for the record.
well, you had one at the last meeting as part of your report.
I'll take a question from Sam.
If, we don't know at this point what the selectmen believe, who I guess the powers to be at this point, what is wrong with the current method of operation, and how the selectmen, if this is passed, want to see something different.
That language is in here a little bit further, Sam, like where there's the creation of the roads commission, and it does change a little bit. Well, all right, so let's get into it, because it is getting late. So John, walk us through the thoughts on the abolishment.
Sure, do you want?
I want to walk through that first.
I have a question pertaining to something you just said.
Okay.
John stated that this is the language we came up with. Can you please elaborate on who gave you that language, or where that language came from? Like, was there
Sure.
money spent, like, from town attorneys putting that language together without any approval from the Board of Selectmen? Like, I'm just curious how this all transpired. Seems like there's a lot of information in there for one person from the select board to come up with, without any approval from anybody else. It has never been brought to the attention of the DPW commission, not once. The only reason it was is because I got a copy from somebody else that you presented it to. That's the only reason that I even knew about it. It's not one person from the DPW commission has ever heard of this. So if you can state just, you said you had people put that together for you, can you please state who put that together and how much that cost the town of Barre?
Sure, I'd be happy to get into that. First, I'll just say, if you look at the DPW commission meeting minutes from March 14th, it was on there.
That,
It
not
was
this,
discussed.
was not, no.
Not-
This, as the two articles together were discussed, it has since been split up in order to not have the state require to not need access to not have the highway portion under the state. The changing of the DPW structure does have to go through the state because that's how it's been established in the past. So, primarily, I put together what I believed was the right way to do it. So, I drafted up a structure, I looked at several examples of other towns, Tammy looked it over, and then along with all the other articles, it went to town council and got some edits there.
I still don't think I understand why. So
What's
you-
the benefit?
That was just to answer the
Yeah,
question
what-
of how.
What's the
But what-
benefit of doing all this?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So, to be clear, this would change some responsibilities, it would create new responsibilities, and then I also have a list of responsibilities that would be.
For who would the new responsibilities be for?
So, one of those would be to the select board, they would now be able to enter into a contract with the superintendent of public
So
works.
they can do that now.
No, they cannot.
Yes,
That would be
yes, they
illegal.
can, you're absolutely incorrect. The previous DPW superintendent to me had a contract, so there's nothing saying that the town cannot enter into a contract with DPW. I chose not to have one when I was hired. They offered me a contract.
To be clear, the select board could enter into an MOU, they cannot enter into a contract with this.
just for all the public, with the jargon, can you elaborate on MOU?
The MOU is a memorandum of understanding. That's a very base level compensation type of discussion, whereas a contract actually goes into specifics about details, about job descriptions, job securities that protect both parties involved. That really eliminate any ambiguity about what's being asked for, what's being required, what's expected, making sure that, the person under that contract isn't being asked to do things outside of that, and making sure that they understand what their responsibilities are. An MOU doesn't provide that level of protection for both parties.
So why did this come about, just from that road?
From the road commission is how this really started, but there are a lot of benefits aside from the road commission that this would help.
Benefits?
For the town, yep. So one of the biggest ones that I cannot stress enough is efficiency. So this would allow for additional flexibility between personnel within the departments, such as administrative personnel. So basically the way it's structured right now, the town administrator oversees the department heads for every department except DPW. Personnel can be shared between all of them except DPW. It's really a matter of creating consistency across the town. And that can really improve efficiency if we can break down some of those silos.
So you're saying it's not efficient right now?
I believe there could be more efficiency in
Can
this
you
town.
give one example of a silo that would break down that we have an issue with right now, please?
Sure. So one of the biggest ones that I've come across is the administrative side of things. Different departments have different administrative personnel. Those administrative personnel get built up with work at times when different objectives are due, where we're paying out a good amount of overtime, things like that, where some of those, if there's less of the siloed activity, administrative personnel from other departments could help with those to bring down those high impact moments for those departments.
Is there a lot of overtime?
Could you please give me an example of a situation where DPW that takes place?
Sure,
We don't
so
have any
last
overtime
year,
that would be fixed by that.
I know last year, when chapter 90 was due, we had administrative personnel working late into the night. I was also here with Sandy working late into the night to get that out in time, and, being able to bring in administrative assistants from other departments to have more flexibility there.
Hang on, Jay.
So, Sandy was gracious enough to help out with that, trying to find different documents downstairs. But it would also be helpful to bring administrative assistants from DPW to other areas when those get heavily impacted, when letters are being put together to send out tax bills, et cetera.
Oh, so you're asking to use their staff to help?
Yep, so have
Offset the
administrative
load
from all
here.
different departments be able to assist each other in those high impact moments. That's one example.
You still haven't given me an example of one thing where that would be beneficial. Like, The thing you're referring to about Sandy helping out finding documents was documents that the selectman's office had misplaced from years past. It had nothing to do with the DPW or any documents that we retain or anything like that. So one of the problems that you just brought up has nothing to do with the department you're trying to change.
Yeah, unfortunately, that document was archived, it was, typically after a project is done, chapter 90 gets done, this time it was up against the deadline, it was almost a year later, so it had already been archived, instead of being done right after the project.
All right.
So,
Listen, so,
that's
we're-
one small aspect.
all right, I'm gonna pause.
Yep.
All right, so I don't want, like, we're not, I'm just trying to figure, I still don't really have
Yeah.
an understanding of like why we wanna abolish, like, a rule that's, all right, I'm gonna give my honest opinion, all right, with this. Do I feel the DPW commission as a whole does their job as elected officials very well? No. I'm gonna put it out there, I don't, all right, and there's a few reasons, all right? If you look at the town, you look at the meeting minutes, on meeting.gov, they haven't had posted minutes since 2019, right? More recently, videos have been put there, but we've also seen examples here of, the things that are in this act that are not being followed, right? Before we abolish a law or a rule, I feel like an attempt should be made to follow the rule that's in place. And instead of just taking the rule, throwing it away and saying you wanna start over. I understand the concept. I'm not saying I disagree wholeheartedly. I think there's improvement on both sides. But I just don't think it's something, if this came from the DPW commission, and they said, you know what, we self-analyzed, and we would like to see improvement. And this is why this rule has changed, or if they're on board for the rule change, right? I'm not sure if I could get behind, like, I've been battling this, I've studied the act of 1980, I mean, I'm a little bored, I guess, but I studied the act of 1988, and I try to analyze it from both points of view. I took a deep dive, right, and I'm like, all right, well, where are the pros? Forgive me if I'm wrong. I feel like the pros of making an amendment of some sort to this act and changing the structure and somehow so that all supervisors are somehow reporting into the same general board. In concept, that's fine. What's listed here though to repeal, and it's a question I do have, in section 3. Section 3, it says the department shall be supervised by a superintendent appointed by town administrator.
Yes.
What other person in town is appointed by the town administrator currently?
So the fire chief, police chief, so appointed by the town administrator through the select board, which is what this
Well,
would be.
that doesn't say that here though.
Consult.
In consultation with select board. So that is the similar structure to,
But it doesn't the select board, forgive me if I'm wrong, but even with the new bylaw, right, the town administrative bylaw, the select board is tasked with interviewing and essentially approving
yes.
any supervisor. That could be the police chief, the fire chief,
Yep.
the treasurer collector, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and that would be the same with this.
I feel like the language is off though.
That's
Because
what
it says-
town administrator in
It
consultation
says to
with select
be
board.
appointed by the town. I feel, all right, I feel like we're trying to give,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's for the employment contract.
I feel like this section 3, hang on, Jay, is, and this is having that objective viewpoint,
Mhm.
right? Like, we can't give too much power as a town government to one entity. Whether that entity, not the town administrator, select board. I'm having a hard time with this one, John, because,
If it would help, I've gone through, I wasn't able to find how many towns have a DPW commission structure the way we do. I was able to carefully go through all of the state special legislation for the last 10 years, so about 1,000 results there. filtered it down, and I was able to find 31 towns that have stated to the state how they're going to establish their DPW department. Of those 31, which is 8.8% of towns in the last 10 years, have in some way established it. Most of, say 12 of those through Public Work Acts, like what we were doing, and then several others through charter updates or changes to their charter. Every single one of those, the DPW is appointed by either the select board, the town manager, the town administrator, or the mayor. None of the ones that have been approved by the state in the last 10 years have.
How many of those towns are chartered?
So, let's see.
Because the
11 of those were through Public Works Acts. And then 15 were through charter, and then there were 4 others that were honestly unclear about it. For example, Town of Boylston abolished sewer commission and placed it under the select board, things like that. So those ones are kind of an other, so to speak.
I think, yeah, no, I get it. This is a challenging one. In terms of, kind of comes up unexpected, right? And fundamentally, my fundamentals, right? Everyone here on this committee, I'm sure has their own opinions and everything. I feel like when we're taking, I have to go back to, like, when you're trying to displace a rule that's on the book, we need to prove why we have to displace that rule and replace it. And
I'd be happy to give more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if the examples, like,
I have plenty of other examples.
yeah, no, I'm gonna open it up. Jay, I'll let you say something, and then if anybody else has any questions, because I'm just having a hard time, like, fully wrapping my arms around it.
One thing I just wanna make sure we're clear to this board, is that the select board is already part of the DPW commission. They already appoint me. Like, they are 3 of the 9 members. I also think it would be, with that being said, in the sewer commission and the water commission, we have over 150 combined years of experience just being on the board and being in the different areas of expertise. So how, and I'm not even saying it was me, but if they're going to hire somebody, I would think those people that have the expertise with that department should be the people doing the hiring. Like, they're involved in it now, the select board still has their say, there's still a 3-member vote into that hiring process. So they're already in there. So all this is doing is taking all the power and giving it more to one person.
That kind of goes to my original point, though, is like, I feel like if the commission, like, read this act and adhered to it, would we be having this conversation?
I think it depends on a few things. I mean, there's other aspects to it, giving hiring authority to the DPW commissioner under them is something that could help us fiscally by allowing things to move quicker and not missing out on opportunities, because right now the DPW commission has to approve postings, approve interviews, approve that. So it's essentially structuring DPW to function the way the police and the fire departments.
Okay, all right. You have a question? Go ahead.
So, this could be an amazing idea, John, right? It really could. I just feel like it's rushed. We're 3 weeks away from town meeting. This hasn't had a public hearing, and I don't understand it. Like, I've read it. I don't understand it. I watched the 22nd meeting, and you talked about, there are currently rules and regulations that aren't being followed, right? So, we talk about past practice, but past practice is silent in a contract. But if something's written, right, just because it hasn't been followed doesn't mean you don't have to follow it. You can now say, hey guys, I know it's been a while, we haven't done this, but let's start going down this road and following this practice. But I don't understand it, and we're 3 weeks away from town meeting. Like,
I can answer that, but
Jason, what do you have?
I just have to touch on what he just said. If there are rules in place that are not being followed, and there's anything that you feel that the DPW itself or the DPW commission isn't doing, there has never been a question to us asked to do something differently. So, with that being said, like, so we're gonna abolish a law, just like he stated, and you haven't even asked us to do anything differently. So I'm not sure, like, if there's something that you feel needs to be different, like a simple question would be probably sufficient to get that changed.
I'd like to know who's on the commission.
Okay, so, we
John,
have
I know John is.
John, the sewer commissioner,
Yep.
Matthew LaPointe, the sewer commissioner, Glenn Alt, the sewer commissioner.
Mr.
Between,
Glenn Hall.
Yep.
Mr. Caruso?
yep, water commissioner, we have Mr. Crusoe, John Pimental, and Ronald Higgins,
Which Caruso?
James.
James.
That was the most recent elect.
This past cycle in April.
Prior to that, we had a commissioner on there that was on the water commissioner for over 50 years.
Jason Pimental, John,
And then the select board, yeah.
Glenn Hall, Matt Lapone.
Yep.
And John.
Yep.
How many more?
3 select,
And 3 select.
should be 9.
So,
So when you meet, I tried to go to one of your meetings.
Yeah, we didn't have a quorum that night, you came in on that, that's right, too. Yeah.
well, and that is one of the challenges, right? Like, if you look at the meetings, if you dive into the DPW commission, there is lack of consistency.
About a
Right.
66% success rate of
Uh,
having a meeting.
And that is part of the objective viewpoint.
But there is nothing on the agenda for any of those meetings that were canceled, 0 items. So, yes.
I've showed up to meetings that were canceled just to tell public who came there for public comment that it's been canceled when it didn't show up properly on the website.
But is that a reason to change the law that's on the books? And
Well, I think part of the problem with that is this is the only oversight to the DPW department. There's no other oversight other than this committee that meets once every 1.5 months.
but you're part of that commission.
I am,
You're the vice chair of that commission.
I am. And I just asked the chair if we could have the meeting sooner, closer to when it was supposed to be scheduled, and he told me no.
But it was next week. Like, there's only 3 weeks to the town meeting.
And
If
that's-
this was in November and you were saying, hey, Sandy, do we have something we can put on the books in the next 2 weeks? Like, you know, they would
No, I'm
put
talking
it
about
on.
the DPW commission
Oh,
meeting that was
okay,
supposed to
okay.
be on Monday, that just got canceled, earlier today.
Would you mind sharing your opinion, Mr. Chase, on this fact? I mean, am I putting you on the spot by asking that question?
No, absolutely. I think there is, my personal opinion, I think there's a personal vendetta among some people, and this is one way to take control to get their outcome the way they want it. I think if John felt that there was a need for some problems, then he should have mentioned them to the meetings. We have canceled meetings, we have tried to reschedule meetings, we've run into conflicts having to reschedule. I think the fact that the way he brought it up the first time to our meeting, he didn't have anything in writing, it was just a verbal, hey, I'm thinking of this, and nobody shot him down at that meeting, because we had no idea what he was thinking. But once he came up with his agenda and put it in writing, we never did see it.
Yep.
That never came before us.
Yep, so this version, there were some changes to it, so this one is new as of this morning, this is finalized as of this morning. I say finalized, but obviously with public input, we can still, work it as needed. I have an email actually drafted to John for, several things to be on the next agenda. Now that it's not on Monday, I don't know that I need to send it tonight, but this is part of what's going to be sent to John to distribute among all of them to have at the next meeting.
Alright.
Unfortunately, that's now over.
Alright, I'm gonna take, I'm gonna let Jason, I'll give him Mr. Chase, and I'll come to you, Sam, and then we're gonna button this up, okay?
I would just like to say, we asked John at the last DPW meeting if he thought this should be brought before the DPW commission, and if any of you guys watch a meeting, John stated no. He didn't think it was important to even mention it to the DPW commission. So John goes out there and says all this transparency and all this stuff, we wanna get everything recorded, but he said he didn't feel this bill should even be talked about with the DPW commission prior to this. John wants to put this on a meeting agenda, granted the meeting was changed, 1 week further out. With that being said, that's still only, at best, it would have been 2 weeks before the town meeting. Now it's gonna be 1 week before the town meeting. It's, something like this, if if there's changes that need to be made, by all means, let's make changes. But I think everybody involved should have input into it, and it shouldn't just be a couple people that have this idea in their head, we're gonna change the world. This system is in place since 1988. John can't give me one example of what hasn't been done that's supposed to be done. So,
Well, all right, I'm gonna leave that there. I'm gonna come up to Mr. Chase for a comment here before we wrap this up.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay.
it's honest to God.
Hey, Sam, did you have a question?
How, as a citizen,
Mm-hmm.
how has the current structure harmed the town? And will the new structure be better for the town? I think that's the thought process, is that we, for some reason, some people think that whatever's been working hasn't been working as well, and so the selectmen wanna come in and say, we have a new way where we think it's going to work better. So the only thing we could think about is that we could talk about this ad infinitum, or we could always go to other towns that have had similar problems and say, what were your problems, other towns? And you changed it over, and did you change the structure so that it would be better for the town? Do you see an improvement?
So a little more research needs to be done.
Yeah.
Do you see an improvement for the new structure?
I don't think anyone here is gonna say, would disagree saying improvement could be needed. I don't know if this, I'm getting caught up with the abolish and the repeal, right? Like we're saying this rule is junk, and throw it away and replace it with a whole entirely new rule. I think you gotta prove that to the voters of the town.
Sure.
I'm gonna pretty much see if the finance committee, because it's getting late, has any further questions on this, and we're gonna leave it in the hands to make a recommendation.
Based on all the unknowns, we don't know if this is gonna cost the town 500 times more than we're currently spending, or 500 times less. Like, I can't in good conscience make a favorable recommendation. We don't know anything about it. I think you need to bring in a mediator, honestly, and have the DPW and the town communicate, because you're the same entity. Like, I'm so confused at, like, I've never seen a DPW in a town so divided. It's like the school department in the town. It's weird.
If I can say, there may be someone on the select board who's very divided and opinionated, and
I don't think you're
can't
it,
get
John.
into that right now,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
John, I wasn't pointing a finger at you for that.
Yeah.
I do have a fairly good list of things that this will improve efficiency on, financially speaking. We haven't gone through what it actually does, have a better explanation here of what it actually changes from what it is now to what it would be. I'm happy to go through that, or I can distribute this list, make copies and give it to other people if we don't wanna go through that right now. But there's a lot more to it that I have prepared to go into detail of what it is, what it does, and more background and research on it.
And I think that's appreciated, right? But, you know, to Corey's point on, you know, this is something that should have its own public hearing, right? It should have discussion amongst the DPW commission, right? And almost a recommendation for like an in-depth discussion of the DPW commission, the folks that are impacted. I feel like maybe you're at the beginning phases of this, but I'm not sure it's something we could, like, I'll be honest, I don't know if this is, like, I don't know if this is, town's even gonna wanna debate this.
And they may not. I mean, I'd certainly appreciate it if you take a chance to look through it. I'm gonna publish out some of my opinions on it, just where we haven't gotten them to them tonight. I'll publish those out, but, you know, if you consider taking a look at it and perhaps deciding at a later date on it.
John, I'm just gonna say, I appreciate your energy and effort you put into everything you do. Like, you know, you and Dr. Marshall, I think, you know, you guys go above and beyond for the community. I really do. Like, you know, me not being favorable on this is basically, one, I don't understand it. You know, I don't understand like the whole concept behind it. And I've read it a bunch. You know, and like I said, you know, I like a lot of your ideas. I really do. I don't know, at this stage of the game, like, I don't know enough and why it's broken, you know, that I'd feel comfortable, you know, going with this. Like,
There's a chance I could help the whole town understand it before the public hearing you have next week, and
Yeah.
perhaps
There'll be an opportunity, I'm sure there's gonna be an opportunity to discuss it further, and it'll I would expect a robust town meeting debate on this, after the interaction we've had. This is, I think we're making up to the finance committee for all the short meetings, that we've had, you know, like we kind of breezing through.
Got used to it.
And I was like, oh, wow, I go home before 9 o'clock tonight, and,
yeah, not so much. There is another article
Yeah,
after this.
it's Article one.
there is one more after this. How, we have a motion? You making a motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion, we pass it over.
Yeah.
It's a motion to pass over?
Second?
Motion and a second to pass over, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And, so Article 23 is the road commission bylaw, and this is essentially off of the passage of the other rule, is that correct?
Yes, it does require 22 to pass, or the previous one to pass in order for this to, so if the other one doesn't pass, this would have to be passed over.
Okay. With that being said,
Make a motion to pass it over.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to pass over, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. That was a lot. We still have to, the finance committee we have one other item, I know it's getting
Almost
late.
forgot about that.
The request to transfer from reserve fund, this is the finance committee reserve fund,
This would be
correct?
for you guys to make that approval, so the reason why, obviously, I put it in is because of our fiscal situation that we are
Yeah.
in, so I am asking if the finance committee would, take $8,696.87 from the reserve fund and put into the snow and ice deficit account.
8,000 or 80,000?
8,000.
Eight thousand, Sam,
They
come on.
did very well this year.
80,000.
80,000, whoa, 8,000, no,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not much, but.
And so to get everyone on the same page, in the finance committee reserve funds, this is a special fund that is set up annually for the operating budget to help with unexpected expenses. So, and the snow and ice could be considered expense. And we do have a substantial amount from special town meeting. There was a transfer to help cover CBAs, a few other expenses. I think some of that money, if we have to go back to the minutes, may even be from the regional dispatch
Could be.
into there now that just got, like, oh, the light just turned on. So there is $115,410.40 in the reserve funds, because we put that in there as special. We had 20,000.
Yeah.
And then we put the additional funds in there. So it does require a majority vote from the finance committee to approve the funds from our reserve fund to transfer out anywhere.
What's the amount?
The amount, 8,600, well, you want the total of the account, or you want
No,
what's
no,
needed?
just what's needed to be transferred.
8,600 and, what was that number?
I'm sorry, $8,698.87.
98,
Oh, I can't see that.
Oh, come on, Cory.
8,698.87.
climate change is good for the budget, man.
Sometimes.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. So we
Must
do,
be something
You gotta
DPW
do a
commission did
vote.
right.
we need a motion, if we wanna, is there any debate on this?
No.
Motion to transfer $8,698.87 from the finance committee reserve account.
Second it,
We have a motion second to reserve funds from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund account to cover the overage or the deficit on the snow and ice
He's gonna
account.
fill it out.
All in favor? Aye.
It's your count, so I need you guys to sign it.
You can sign it.
With that being said, so we do have our public hearing coming up next Wednesday. It's gonna be here, not at the senior center this
Okay.
year.
And it's still
Uh,
6:30?
6:30 PM. And then
And this will be taken.
we
off
would
the
want
article.
to revisit the passed over articles, very likely, and then at least offer no recommendation, like we have to take some sort of action on it, right? Maybe, hold on. Everybody's, that's on the books, right? The public hearing's on the books, it's
Yes.
here, okay. And with that
How
being
much bigger
said,
is
I'm
the
gonna
room
sign off
upstairs?
on this and
That you get a bigger is the room
Hold on,
upstairs
today's
where
the
you put
5th.
cameras.
So I wanna do it in the big room, so there's more room, I have to probably do a little.
It's up on the 3rd floor.
It's on the 3rd floor, it's really nice on the other side, but it's nice and big, really, hopefully put a table in it. It'll be nice to have it.
alright, I'm gonna slide that, there we go. Well, you got a
That was your
there we go. Alright.
Oh, do we all have to
Yeah.
sign it?
Yeah, anytime there's a transfer, it has to be signed by at least a
This
majority.
is your account, so it's like the Board of Assessors.
I thought he had complete power.
You get the power.
There we go.
I hope it passes.
Beautiful.
Keep you up to pass your bedtime.
Yeah, that'll be like a little surprise. Every month would be like winning the
Oh,
lottery.
mine too.
That's how I feel.
Even if it was,
I
you
skipped
know, I was
dinner too,
looking
and
at
I'm
some of the
I'm
towns
regretting
like
it.
Brookfield
I'm
and
regretting
some of the small ones, they're still
Yeah.
getting 8 or 9,000.
Yeah.
So that could offset.
All right, once Eric gets a
Now.
signature on there, we can,
And then the,
get a motion.
the old Barry Mill's gonna reopen.
Motion to.
What is that? Is that
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion second to adjourn, all in favor?
Pass that down.
Aye.
All right,